Good evening, and welcome to the December 22nd, 2015 meeting of the Sherborn Board of Selectmen. We'll ask our town administrator, David Williams, to read the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, we'll add topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance, and then have a public comment period of about 10 minutes, and then have consideration of issuing the following annual licenses for stable licenses, common victualler license, ABCC licenses, and Class 2 licenses. In consideration of requests for New Year's Eve hours extensions at the Heritage House. And then appointments, Farm Pond Advisory Committee, Adam S. Henry as an associate member for a term expiring 6/15/16. Then the next item, you may want to adjust the agenda and move that to the next meeting for appointment of an acting fire chief. And then consideration of town council contract. And then under routine business, we have town financial and budget development update with the finance director, town administrator report regarding well testing results from MDEP, and then review of notices of intent for the 2016 annual town meeting. And that'll cover Pine Hill School renovations, an NOI for housing in town center, and then consideration of other articles initiated by the Board of Selectmen. Then Selectmen reports, and look at the meeting calendar to set the next meeting, and consideration of minutes, and consideration of payroll warrant, and then adjourn to executive session for MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21(3), to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining as it pertains to health insurance.
Okay. So do we have any amendments to that agenda?
I would recommend moving the appointment of the acting fire chief till the next selectmen's meeting, whenever that is, so that we can get a little more information on that.
If it's required, we can move it to the next meeting. I would also correct Heritage House to Heritage at Sherborn, I think, is the name on the license application. And so those are, anybody else have anything to amend? Okay.
So moved.
Okay.
It's Heritage of Sherborn?
Is that what it is?
Yep.
Heritage of Sherborn.
Yep.
So we have a second on Paul's motion.
Second.
Okay, seconded by Chuck. All in favor? Aye. Okay, we're off to the races. Do we have any public comments? No? That's good. Now we're up to the licensure portion of our program. And I guess we start with stable licenses. David, you want to walk us through this, or Jeannie?
I'd like to have Jeannie go through, because she's done this each year.
Okay. All right. Why don't you come over to here? Thanks, Jeannie.
There are several that need to be renewed. They've all been inspected by the animal inspector, the fire chief, well, the fire inspector, the wiring inspector, and the building inspector. There were some issues with some of them. They've been corrected in the last couple of days. There are a few that we've held back because the issues weren't corrected.
Okay. Anybody have any, maybe we should take these as a group. That's how we've done them before. So there's 10 stable licenses for renewal. You want to
read through those?
Yeah, I think it'd be great, David.
Okay.
Thank you.
Under the stable licenses, George Fisk, Bogastow Farm, 12 North Main Street. Patty,
Hold on. You
George
shouldn't
is-
read the whole list. You should only read the ones that are in there.
Yeah, George
We
is-
actually have, yeah.
George is not going to, his is not going to be renewed tonight.
So
These were-
you gave me a folder with the ones that aren't being renewed, and then the ones
Right.
that are on the
The
top.
ones on top are the ones that are going to be
Okay.
renewed.
Maybe I should read them, David, since I've got the folders.
yeah,
Okay,
unless
great.
we still, for those that aren't being acted on, that we were posted, we should point out which ones they're.
Well, on those, I suggested before the meeting to Jeannie and to David that we approve those subject to the whatever remedial work we've done afterwards. That way, the license will be here at the Selectman's office, ready to be picked up as soon as everybody's happy.
I mean, if you want to do that, that's up to you. They're there in the folder.
The advantage of that is that the licenses expire on December 31. None of these are new licenses. They're all long long-term citizens of the town. They know how to run stables pretty well. And it's a very busy time of year. You try and get an electrician to come to your house on Christmas Eve, it's not the easiest thing to do. So rather than putting our residents through a lot of uncertainty, I would suggest that we renew all 10 with those who haven't yet completed all the things that have to be done, that they be held by the selectman's office until everybody's satisfied.
How does that help them if they don't have a valid license because it's being held to repair electrical work or other things that were noted by our inspectors?
They might finish it tomorrow and not have to wait 2 weeks before the next
Okay,
meeting.
so we're going to assume they're going to get signed off? Yeah, okay.
The argument against that would be when these licenses come from renewal, everything should be done. I mean, but it clearly creates a logistical delay for them. So, when you come forward with a license, you should
Well, I've never been down this path. What happens if your license expires?
I don't know. You just open the stable doors and the horses run away. I have no idea.
We sent them over to the Brandons.
I don't know. I mean, and I'm sure there are things that maybe some of them are technical violations, but we do have a few of them that have electrical work that needs to be done, and a couple of them that seem not to have any sign-offs at all other than the animal inspector, and I don't know why.
Because
That is-
one of them hasn't been inspected by the other three. In other words, 190 Maple Street, the electrical, building, and fire inspector have not been out there yet.
And it looks like that's true for 113 Western also.
And truthful, yes, 113 Western was the late arrival.
Okay.
But again, there isn't any new license. This isn't... If we had somebody new come forward, then I can see we want to be sure they got the right features for the animals, make sure they're safe and everything else. But these are all long-serving residents of the town.
So why don't we vote the ones that are in order, and we can issue those, and then we'll vote the ones that are not in order, and we can instruct that they be held until the sign-offs are all obtained.
That was what I was thinking of.
And I guess the question is, how long of a compliance period do we get? I mean, part of the reason for these annual inspections is to make sure things like electrical problems and other problems that are, safety issues for people and horses are addressed, right? So I don't know if you have any suggestion on how long we would get people to comply before some other action was taken. I don't know.
How many of them do we have that fall into the completely, they've been completed?
There's 5 that have been completed, Chuck. 5 out of 10.
So can you identify those by name?
Yeah. So
So, can I just say something
Yeah,
before
sure.
we move on? So is there something we could do to have this process happen earlier in the year, so it's not the last meeting?
It started early.
And,
It started at the
And-
beginning of November.
this is a big improvement from last year, too. We've actually got several with full sign-offs this year.
I think what put us behind some is we have a new building commissioner, and we had the fire chief out for a bit. So just trying
So-
to...
And a little bit of background to that, keep in mind, these are part-time employees. It's not the farms that are holding us up. It's the fire chief, the electrical inspector, and animal control officer. They're all trying to make a date that they can all go together.
Okay.
So, and right now, we're at a slight disadvantage. We went through changing building inspectors. We have somewhat of a lapse with the inspection on the fire side. So some of these things might be done, fixed,
do they have to
and
be-
they're waiting on a
do they have to be done
reinspection.
within a certain period of time of the renewal?
On the inspection side? I don't,
The inspectors get a memo at the end of October, early November, with the list of stables that need to be inspected. And it's just, this year was just difficult. We had, the building inspector was on very limited hours. It was just one thing after another. So, but I think they did a really good job getting out there, getting the information back, and sometimes it's just hard getting people to get things done.
As I say, there's a long licensed establishments, and these are just renewals. And so there's a presumption of validity and compliance and so on. And to single out people and say, no, you don't have a license at all, that might put them in trouble with their insurance companies or whatever else might be out there.
That's a good practical suggestion, Chuck.
Yeah, no, if part of the delay is because of difficulty in getting inspectors out there, I like the idea of batching them. The ones that are ready to go, let's go ahead and approve them, and the others, let's approve them subject to complying with getting all the required inspections.
Okay, yeah, and I would assume that any of these that have, what look like they're fire or electrical code issues, if they were serious enough to
Yeah.
pose a health and safety issue, somebody would have said so.
We can always not deliver the license.
Yeah, I'm not sure that solves the health and safety issue, but okay.
I think one of the reasons why they were also very cautious this year is because of the fire we had on Farm Road, where there were 4 horses lost. And so I think they're being extra cautious.
Yeah, and I mean, that just goes to my point of, there's got to be an endpoint on the licensure process. So if there's people who aren't in compliance, they want their licenses, they should solve the problem and get in there and get their license. All right, so,
Some of this was, there was an extension cord across a barn, and when the inspector came and saw the extension cord, and so afterwards, when they found out about it, they removed the extension cord, but they couldn't get a re-inspection when there was no extension cord.
we assume they remove it. I mean, unless you've got inside knowledge, but yeah. All right, so we've got Patty Michaud at 111 Coolidge Street, Sandra Niles, Long Run Farm, 70 Bullard Street. I should say the number of horses. Patty Michaud, 25 horses. Sandra Niles, 10 horses. Elaine Chatavian, stable license, 16 horses, 12 Ames Drive. Susan Bernard, 42 Washington Street, stable license, 10 horses. And Deborah Green, 51 Whitney Street, stable license, 38 horses. Okay. And these are the ones that are all in order. So do we have a motion to
So moved.
approve that batch? Good, second. All right, all in favor? All right, so those are ready. Oops, I don't have a blue pen, so I'll have to borrow one. Signed and going.
And can I then make a second motion?
Yeah? Why don't we read them, though? Paul, you want to read them?
The 5 remaining are George Fisk. Doesn't say how many on this list. Where were you reading them from?
I've got the
George is
applications.
25.
Hang on. Yeah, so I'll do it. George Fisk, 12 North Main Street, Bogastub Farm, LLC, 25 horses. Matt Mayo, Corsebrook Farm, 39 Brush Hill Road, 44 horses. Mary Barbara Alexander, 127 Farm Road, 7 horses. Joan Honorato, 190 Maple Street, 6 horses. And Padar Hardiman, 113 Western Avenue, 8 horses. Okay, so these are all ones that need inspections or follow-up inspections.
So my motion would be to approve those licenses to be held by the Selectman's office pending inspections, re-inspections, and any compliance issue, resolution of any compliance issues.
Okay, second on that?
Second?
All in favor? Oh, Chuck?
I have a
discussion? Yeah.
friendly amendment, which is, Mike, I like your suggestion of having some outside time limit on it, just so that it gets done. And I don't know what's reasonable, 30 days, 45 days?
But I don't know what our schedules, what our inspector schedules are like. There are
Yeah,
holidays, there's
I'm frankly not
Christmas and-
comfortable working the specific issues, which is why we have the process. I'd like to respect the process, and this is going outside the process, so I think Mike's suggestion of putting an outside time limit on it makes sense. I don't know, if maybe 60 days.
How about 90 days? That'll get us through the holidays, and if you have 8 feet of snow on the ground, it might be difficult too.
What's
Winter is
the town's liability if you do this and there's a fire in February?
None.
Even
one of the-
though they don't have a license?
It's one of the exclusions under the Tort Claim Act.
No, he's waiting.
Okay. All right, so we've got a motion and a second. Chuck had suggested putting a 60-day date. I think Paul suggested a 90-day date. You okay with 90 days, Chuck?
It just, you're getting into a quarter of the year, you know, the difference between 60 and 90 is, there's nothing magical about it. I'm even thinking 30 days. I would like to encourage everyone involved in the process to get it done. And that's one way to do it, is to put a shorter time limit on it. So I have a preference for 60 days over 90.
I mean, you could say 30, and if they don't get it done in 30, they have to come back in.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, 30 days is January, 60 days is February. And if it's anything like last winter, I don't know if you've had occasion to try and get contractors to work, but I had some storm damage to my house. I'm still waiting for contractors to come. And to do a small job like removing an extension cord to get an electrician to come on this bigger projects, it's just not going to, just doesn't seem reasonable to hold it that tight.
I'm comfortable with 90 days. I'd prefer 30 or 60. Maybe we can tighten it next year. This seems like an inefficient way of approaching this. I would prefer to be able to do it in one setting, but
Yeah, and all of these, or at least 3 of these, deal in some way with electricity, and the other 2 are not.
If you're
Just almost completely uninspected. I'd be interested in having these moved along rather quickly.
I was going to say, if you're going to wait, give them up to 90 days, then you have time for them to come back in.
Yeah, just, I mean, when one of the comments is there's a burning odor when a certain piece of equipment is turned on and things like that, we want that stuff fixed. And as Paul points out, they may have already done it or may be able to do it between now and our next meeting, so we should vote these. I don't know, I'd like to put some kind of extension on them. I don't know what people are thinking.
If they already did it and they're waiting for the electrical inspector to show up and he shows up tomorrow, you're forcing them into a lapse the first of the year.
No, I'm not saying don't approve them. I'm saying to do what Paul suggested, which is we approve them, but then we have that timeline.
I'd say 30 days, puts a sense of urgency on it.
Okay.
You okay with that?
Yeah, I thought you were changing to not approve anything at all.
No, I'm comfortable.
I will say that out of them, the 2 haven't been inspected, and then the other 3, they've all contacted the wiring inspector and the fire inspector. They are working on it. It's not like they're totally ignoring the whole process. So they are working on it.
Yeah, one of them looked very minor, the other 2 looked
Right.
at least
One of them is very
superficially
minor, and it
more
should be taken care of within the
significant.
next couple of days.
Yeah, okay. So Chuck, it's your motion, so make it.
no, I've heard a number of people suggest 30 days. That's my preference. So I would move to amend the motion to limit the conditional approval to a 30-day time period. Obviously, we can revisit it in that 30-day period, but
I'll second it.
All right, so moving second, any more discussion of the time period? All right, let's vote on Chuck's amendment. All in favor? All right, that's Chuck's amendment to Paul's motion. One opposed.
One opposed.
I was assuming, I'm sorry. But Paul's on record. And now we've got a motion to approve, subject to a 30-day review, in which after 30 days, if these violations are not, or the inspection lapses, I should say, are not resolved, they'd have to come back in. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd just say on discussion that these people are all pretty prominent citizens of the town. They've been here for a long time. They're,
Paul, nobody's questioning their,
And-
civic involvement or anything else about their prominence, anything like that. It's just a question of the licensure process.
what I'm saying is you give them a hard time. It's not necessary. This is a small town.
I don't think we're asking them to do anything different than they would do anyway, which is to get their inspections finished and satisfy the requirements for licensure, which they're evidently trying to do. We're not imposing any additional
I would treat
burdens
people,
or requirements.
I would treat people generally and these people specifically better.
So we treat certain people differently than other people, or?
That is what I said. I said I would treat everybody better than what this motion does. But in specific, these 10 people or these 5 people, given that I know all of them and they're responsible citizens, I would treat them better than what this motion proposes to do.
Okay. Do we have any more discussion? So we have a motion on the table. All in favor? Okay, great. Let's see, next license is secondhand motor vehicle license. Get those, Gene. All right, we've got to sign the other ones, right?
Those are
Those are the ones we issued, but we have not signed the other ones.
So for a second-hand motor vehicle license, there has to be a garage space. Is that indicated on your paperwork as to where the garage is?
No, they're all renewals. They're the same as they've been in past years.
So same garage as before?
Yes. Please, sent an email that we had no complaints or issues.
So I'd move approval of Sherborn Auto Sales, Rose's Automotive, and Sherborn Auto Brokers. Class 2 second-hand motor vehicles licenses.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Anybody have any questions or comments on these? Okay. Looks like two of them are the same address, Jeannie, but they're not the same
They're
premises?
not the same person, they're the same address, different offices.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. All right. And they're not it doesn't look like they're keeping the autos at that location anyway.
Right.
Okay. And then Rose's, okay, good. We have a motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye, okay.
And I'd move approval of the 5 common victuals licenses.
Okay, can I borrow your pen when you're done? Yeah. Okay, common victualers license is great.
That's Sim J's Rustic Pizza, Senile Frosty, Heritage of Sherborn, Dunkin' Donuts, and Sherborn Sandwich Shop.
Okay. And Jeannie, are these all in order? They have everything, all the inspections and everything they need?
Yes, everything's in order, all the businesses, the folder's there, there was a checkoff and
So had there been health inspections on all these
Yes,
businesses
the
too?
Board of Health goes through all of
Great,
them.
thank you. Okay. Thank you. All right, so we've got, Paul has read the names here. Do we have a motion to approve?
That's what I did.
Okay, so we need a second. Are seconding the particulars? Okay, Sean seconded. Any discussion of any of these? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of approval? Aye, those are the victualler licenses, and then we have ABCC licenses next.
Move approval of renewals of Sherborn Wine and Spirits, Sherborn Market, Heritage of Sherborn, and Heritage of Sherborn Fine Wine and Provisions.
Okay, we had a
Second.
motion. Trying to sign and think at the same time, Paul. It's very hard.
On the ABCCs, there's a couple of places for each license that needs to be signed, so we also have to sign this.
So it's been moved and I believe seconded. Has it been seconded? I'll second it.
It has been seconded
It
already.
has been, okay, good. And any discussion? Now, these ones we ask for public comment on at all, Paul?
No, the law says that they're entitled to an automatic renewal unless you give them a hearing to revoke.
Got it, okay.
It's pretty much an automatic.
If you have any questions, Jen Ziskin and Laura Weatherall are both here, if you haven't. Laura is the manager of Sherborn Fuel, and Jen is the manager of Heritage.
I would just say to them, thank you so much that you are here in Sherborn and that you're providing such excellent service to our residents. Very much appreciate your presence here.
Absolutely. Okay. Here, Paul. All in favor of the 4 ABCC licenses? All in favor of the ABCC's? Great, good. You're all approved. Thank you. That wasn't smooth, but it was, or efficient, but it was done. Okay, and then Heritage of Sherborn's request for a New Year's Hour extension. Do you want to explain what that's all about? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jen Ziskin from Heritage of Sherborn, and we are hoping to extend our hours for New Year's Eve to have a 4-course meal paired with wine for New Year's, and then followed by a party in the pub with a DJ that will go to midnight, a little past midnight.
Okay,
I move approval.
I second.
all right.
And support of the motion, I would say that I feel that this board should support our businesses, help maintain the vitality of our downtown. Allowing people to have these later hours is pretty common in the Commonwealth. It's routinely granted everywhere. We need to support those who are working in the downtown area because it's a tough environment for businesses to exceed. And given the competition that's out there, we certainly should match that competition by giving them the hours.
Sounds good.
Sounds good to me.
Any other comments? Okay, good. All right. Chuck,
Wait,
anything?
We didn't,
John?
should we specify a time? She said a little after midnight.
Oh, okay.
But the,
I thought there was a request.
The motion isn't,
Is
so
it in
1
there?
1 a.m.
I thought it was, yeah.
Okay.
All right, so motion is 1 a.m. It's been moved and second. It's been discussed. All in favor? Aye, there you go.
now can we talk about getting reservations at Mora?
Yeah. Just call me.
Different issue.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great night.
Thank you.
Happy holidays,
Oh,
everyone.
thank you. Good luck. All right, this is the...
David, do we have any unused liquor licenses in the Selectman's office that haven't been issued?
Not that I know of.
Yes?
think we're allowed to have 5 beer and wine licenses, and we only have 1.
Who that, how many?
Pardon me?
We only have...
You
We
have,
only have 1
The
beer
one.
and wine, and I think we're allowed to have up to 5.
so you could issue one more.
Beer and wine, we could issue 4 more.
One more. So if some of our common victualers out there want to also do beer and wine, they can apply for it.
We have 2 places that sell beer and wine, right?
We just have 1, Sherborn Fuel.
Okay.
Provisions isn't all alcohol.
Oh, I see.
retail.
That you're drawing that distinction. Gotcha. Okay. And wine and spirits is as well. Okay. Oh, hence the different colors. Now I get it. Excellent. Okay. There you go. There's lots of tabs there to sign. Okay. Do we need to do anything other than vote the extended hours? Is there anything we need to sign on that one, Jeannie? Okay. Good. Now we have an appointment of Adam Henry as an associate member of the Farm Pond Advisory Committee. David, you want to?
So moved.
There's been an associate member vacancy on the Farm Pond Advisory Committee, and it was properly advertised, and we received an application from Adam S. Henry, and he had talked to the committee itself, and he has experience in project management, and they were endorsing his candidacy to be appointed as an associate member to the Farm Pond Advisory Committee.
Okay.
So can I make the motion?
Please do.
I move to appoint Adam Henry, to the Farm Pond Advisory Committee for a term to expire June 15, 2016.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor? So that's only a 6-month appointment, and then I guess we'll renew that seat and others in June? Is that the idea?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I need to clarify something. The motion I made appointed him to the advisory committee, because I read the motion that's here, not as an associate member, but as a full member.
Associate, yeah.
So can I amend, can I move to reconsider the motion that I just made?
Yes, thank you. We have a second on Paul's motion to
Second.
reconsider. All in favor of reconsidering? Aye. Okay,
And then under reconsideration, I would make the following amended motion. Move to appoint Adam Henry to an associate position, associate member of the Farm Pond Advisory Committee for a term to expire 6/15/2016.
second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye, thanks, Paul, for catching that one.
Nice catch.
Okay, good. Next item is consideration of town council contract. David, you want to give some background, and then I think Chuck
Sure.
and I have a recommendation. You're going to recuse?
If the discussion is going to involve
Decisions about who is town council?
Barbara San Andre, then I have to recuse myself.
Okay.
This item, we have an existing one-year contract with Petrini and Associates, and our lead town council is Barbara St. Andre, and Ms. St. Andre has announced that effective January 8th, she will be going to the firm of Kopelman and Page, where she was a previously attorney for about 20 years. So the Board of Selectmen have options. They can move all our current work with the lead counsel, or they can keep all of the work with the Petrini and Associates under the existing contract, or they can mix and match, move certain open cases with Barbara to her new firm and keep some with Petrini. So it's move everything, don't move anything, or move just certain items.
Okay. And David, you've listed a few cases on your letter. I guess that's Chris Petrini's letter. So those are all the ones being handled by Petrini in addition to the town council work, right?
Right, those are currently open.
Okay. And so as the legal town council subcommittee, Chuck and I consulted on this question earlier in the week. And I also had an opportunity to speak with Barbara St. Andre, who advised that her new firm would maintain the rate structure and the terms of the existing contract, that they would honor the same terms that we had with Petrini.
Yeah, the one thing I would add is, by way of background, is the current contract with Petrini designates Barbara as the primary attorney for the town.
That's right.
Which is one of the reasons why it's not an automatic continuation. It wasn't just any attorney.
That's right.
I mean, it should be, Chris Petrini did offer to continue as lead counsel in her place.
Yeah, he did. Chris Petrini did offer to continue as lead counsel. I know they're both interested in the legal work for our town.
Right.
Yeah, Chuck and I did discuss this. The thought was if they would keep the same terms that Petrini had, we would like to stay with Barbara, and we would recommend staying with Barbara when she moves to the new firm. Barbara confirmed that her arrangements with Koppelman is that they will allow her to move clients over on the same terms that she had them at Petrini. This is a one-year contract, so we would be bidding this work out in June anyway, and the recommendation would be that the board transfer the work to Barbara St. Andre at her new firm, or transfer the work with Barbara St. Andre at her new firm, and go back out to bid in June and invite bids both from Petrini as well as anybody else who, in addition to Barbara, who cares to bid. Anything to add on that, Chuck?
No? Good summary?
So of the spending that we do with Petrini now, how much of it is with Barbara and how much of it is with other attorneys in the firm? And if we stick with her, are we going to have higher rates for the other business that she doesn't do, if that's clear?
She does primarily all the work, and the stuff that she's working on is lots of times non-retainer work that's not within our retainer. If it's simple retainer work, it usually gets sent to somebody, one of the other attorneys. So I wouldn't anticipate.
Then that wouldn't change.
Yeah.
Yeah, my understanding from what she said was that the rates as well as the retainer would carry over to
Right.
Copeland, that they would honor those rates. But Mark's point is right, which is these are different individuals. They may have different billing rates, so we would want to get that confirmation in writing from them, David, that the billing rate structure carries over, even though it's not the same individuals.
Okay.
Anything else? Anybody have any other suggestions? David, are you indicating, I'm not as familiar with a couple of these pending litigation matters, and was wondering, are you recommending that those litigation matters in particular go over, or I guess they're litigation or pending litigation, potential litigation?
I'm relying on my conversation with Barbara that they all could transfer. I believe 2 of those 3 cases involve insurance.
Okay.
So
So there's insurance counsel retained?
is
Rather than
in there
Barbara?
too. No, they've been working on it together.
She's been working on it with separate counsel for the insurance company? Is that
Right.
Okay, so that person would stay in place?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I thought I remembered meeting somebody else with some of these.
Yeah. I can't remember his
I
name.
don't either. Okay. All right, any further discussion of this?
No, I'm comfortable with your suggestion.
Okay, so you want to make a motion, Chuck?
Sure, I would move to continue to retain Barbara St. Andre after she's moved to her new firm of Copeland and Page on the same hourly rates and terms and conditions that were contained in the engagement letter with Petrini and Associates.
Okay, we have a second on that?
Second?
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye, okay, great, thanks. Let's see. So Paul, we're done with that subject now. Next item is routine business, finance director, town accountant, financial and budget development update. Irene?
Sure. A few financial updates relates to Schedule A was submitted to the Department of Revenue in early December. That is the last DOR report required for fiscal year 15. The fiscal year 15 audit is still in progress. I just received additional questions today from our audit firm. They did inform me that the lead person that's working on our audit is off for the entire week next week. So we'd be looking into the new year for the deliverable. And the last item is the budgets went out to departments December 1st, and they're due back December 31st. And then we should have those available in the budget books as well as online for people to be able to see the requests from the departments that go to the Board of Selectmen and Advisory Committee.
Okay. And Irene, on the audit, is this taking longer than it does some years to get the auditors to respond? I know you said they had additional questions, or is it just sort of routine business?
It varies. In my prior towns, some in their contracts had a deliverable of March 31st. When I came to Sherborn, I was looking at the FY14 audit during my first month with Sherborn that was finalized in March for FY14.
Okay.
We had asked the auditors in June to make sure they had a deliverable by November 30th. That is something that I had in my prior contracts in other towns. And all the way up until mid-October, we were being guaranteed we'd have a final audit by November 30th. It was when we started asking the status, the additional questions started coming back. So we informed the auditors of our timeline, and unfortunately, it seems like it's just not being met. I did inform the partner that we will be going back out for a bid for a new audit firm, and they have an opportunity to submit a bid with the other audit firms and I would inform them when the bid posting goes up.
Okay. So, but you are expecting to get something by the end of the year from them, or not?
Not the end of the fiscal year. They are basically, our main person that's working on our audit is off.
Oh, they're off through the end of the year?
Christmas
The-
Eve.
Not the end of the calendar year, but before the end of
Exactly.
the fiscal year?
Oh,
Okay.
definitely.
Okay.
My hope is by January 31st at the absolute
good.
latest.
You expecting any material adjustments?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Great. David, do you have anything on your town administrator report?
No,
And thanks, Irene.
the only thing, there was talk about the general chemical well testing results that had come in, and there were various communications on that, so I just wanted to point out that we did get the well testing results. If somebody would like copies of it, they could contact us, and we could give them that. I mean, from the public.
So David, those well testing results were the new results, and then today you circulated, or Diane circulated something from the same person at DEP showing the results, the more historical results from 2012, right?
Yes.
Okay,
And I compared them,
yeah.
and there were some very sort of interesting things that came out. And then I consequently had a discussion with Carol Boyce on how to sort of interpret this. And because I was looking particularly at the perchloroethylene results, the first column, on the 2015. And if you go and you compare it to 2012, the first two on there don't really change much. And then, but the next four, and then you skip one, and then the next half a dozen after that were all non-detected in 2012 and then are now showing values for PCE in 2015. And so, I said to myself, well, this looks like we're starting to see some things turn up, and but I wanted to get a better idea of how to read this, and so I gave Carol a call. And she said, you can't really jump to that conclusion, because if you look at the method blank, which is supposed to be the control sample and isn't supposed to really have anything in it, it's showing results of 0.28, 0.28, and 0.21, so which pretty much makes the other measurements worthless. She did, however, say that the one that we had on TCE, tetrachloroethylene, this 0.18, she thinks says there's something going on, because that well is, over 500 feet deep. It's quite close to the aqueduct, and she's not quite sure why, and it's clearly something coming from General Chemical, and why would it be found that deep? So that really raises a question. And then her last point was that the results on caffeine and I guess a couple of these other things tell you, since they're all non-detected, that the septics really aren't playing a role in these measurements. The nitrate values are, sort of naturally occurring background kind of numbers. So my takeaway was that I think, our motion to retain the consulting firm is a good one, and I think we really need some help on this, because it's going to take somebody who's going to be able to talk to both General Chemical and DEP and push back on some of these results.
They have the draft changes to the contract as they were requested the last time you looked at that contract. They're in Mark and Chuck's hands today, and they were getting their recommended changes back to me.
So Mark, did Carol have anything to say about whether to push back with DEP to do these tests again, since the testing, the analysis was flawed?
Yes, she suggested that we continue to do more testing. And she was also, she pointed out that the way the samples were taken was not ideal.
Shouldn't we push back with the person who sent those to us from DEP and, thank them for sending us the results and say to them, we appreciate the results, but they're really worthless because
Look at the method blank numbers.
the method
Right.
you used was unscientific and the analysis was contaminated.
Yep.
Yeah.
And coming from the consultant, that'll have some weight.
We can do it from the consultant, we can wait, or we can do it now.
Okay.
We can. I mean, it proves the point, like
You
Mark's.
invite them in to tell us how they interpret it.
DEP,
Yeah.
that would be a show.
Well,
Well, I think it's obvious how they're going to interpret it. This isn't, these test results are going to reinforce their plans for the,
Well, you're looking at
Remedial.
2012, but these are the ones with all the numbers on them in 2015.
yeah, but it's not going to change their, it's all well below drinking water standard.
Right.
So they're not going to change the remedial.
They don't even care.
Yeah.
they care, they just care, I think, about
Well,
different things. I mean, we're trying to use it as the canary in the coal mine.
right,
They're just trying to use it to say the drinking water is still safe.
right. They basically handed us bogus data.
So, I think
go.
there's two different things going on here.
It seems like it was a waste of their effort to take the samples the way they took them and then analyze them the way they analyzed them.
Well, the thought was good, it just, the implementation was flawed.
Right, so that's the question I had, which is, do we push back with them and say, that's great, you promised us you'd do sampling, we assumed you meant valid sampling that actually meant something, do it again? And that could come from Chuck and Mark again, or it could come from a consultant, I suppose.
I'd like to see if we can get the consultant switched in on this, and we're gonna spend the money, let's use them, and they can certainly help do this better than I can.
Chuck was
We
going
can
to
do it
write
in
about the
concert.
method blank and the analytics.
I would say it'd be a pretty simple letter saying, it looks like the sampling's flawed. Look at the method blank results, and we would urge you to do it again. But I think it does have more weight coming from the consultant than
Yeah.
from 5 non-chemists here.
It wasn't just that the method blank was contaminated, it also was, I believe they were taking the samples from the faucets.
From the tap, yeah.
Tap, yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
And not really from the well.
Right.
So that goes through the entire house and
It could go through a carbon filter, it could go through lots of different things.
yeah,
Yeah.
it just was taken at the wrong place.
Well, and had to have been done intentionally, because I assume they hired somebody who takes water samples, right, to do this, you would think?
That's the idea.
All right, good. So we've got a plan with those. I mean, Mark, if you want to have DEP come back in, we can have them back in, but maybe we should send this
Well-
letter first and then invite them.
Yeah,
Yeah?
I think so.
What did we just direct someone to do?
We directed David to finish the contract, and then I
So they
guess
can-
Mark and Chuck will work with the consultant to get a letter out to DEP.
Agreed.
Okay, good. Everybody okay with that plan?
Yes.
All right, now we have notices of intent for the 2016 annual town meeting. David, why don't you walk us through this subject?
Okay.
Is there a new packet on the notices of
There's,
intent?
yeah, it looks like this, Paul. Item number 6, do you have that?
Okay.
We need to recycle them.
I just want the first page.
A lot of paper.
A shredder and a recycling. For all the extra copies.
These were notices of intent for review for the 2016 annual town meeting. I tried to put down as many that have been mentioned to me, many that we've carried on throughout the year. And this one, you had school capital last time, but I think there's some additional information that they provided, but the dollar amount hasn't changed. Do you want to read down through them, or do you want to take each one up? I think one of them...
Frank's here. I mean, I think we're
Okay.
going to probably go through these 100 times between now and town meeting, but if anybody
Right.
had any questions today, we should give Frank an opportunity to answer
Yeah.
the questions.
Specifically, what I'm looking for is when we go through them, for a mention of what you would like to see for additional information brought forward, and also,
I thought this had too much information, this particular one.
really? Who you would like to have come in. If you want something bounced off another committee, we can refer it out, or we can have them brought in, the co-sponsors brought in, or whatever.
So I think this is the kind of thing that is an annually recurring article, and I have to say that's a model for what we're trying to do for town buildings. And so it's very well done. It should go on the warrant. It does need to be reviewed by advisory, and it also needs to be reviewed by capital, because this isn't going to be funded out of operating funds. The idea is to treat it as a capital expenditure. So those are the two committees that it would normally go by, and I assume it's been approved by the school committee. So we don't need to say, go get approval from the school committee, because you should already have that.
Right, we do. And I'm Frank Hess, chairman of the Pine Hill
Frank,
School Building Committee.
Before you get rolling,
Yep.
can I just ask you a question? What, how much did the town meeting approve last year for this?
I don't have it in front of me. Do you have that?
Can you introduce the guy next to you?
Bruce
Never been
Broughton,
introduced to him.
who's the business manager of the Dover Sherborn Public Schools.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Hello, thanks for coming in.
I have the number available.
You have it?
Yes. It was $200,500.
Okay, that's right.
Okay.
And what procedure did you want to use?
Frank, I think if people had questions, I mean, today, the intent is sort of an overview of articles with people able to ask questions as much as they want, but it's really not the final say on anything.
Right.
Did you envision we would have to take a vote today, David, to
No.
put things on the warrant or anything?
No. I mean, the routine articles, we're going to assume that they're going to be,
Right.
and
Yeah,
then at
yeah,
some point
okay.
you would take a vote in support or not. And you can
Yeah.
take those, sometimes you wait to hear what capital budget says, or you wait for advisory, or sometimes you vote them before they go to those. So it's really up to you on if you want to vote support tonight, or if you want to vote
I'm
a
ready to,
different night without bringing them back.
I had a question for you, Frank,
Yes.
or Hans, either one. The biggest item on this list is the window replacement.
Right.
And the letter from the consultant or the contractor on that talked about how the school committee had wanted some energy savings that significantly exceeds code minimum performance, and they're very candid here, which says the energy cost impacts are relatively modest, and I think there was something in there that talked about it was in the order of a
40 to
few
70 years.
hundred bucks or something a year.
Right, and so as we've been looking at that, we've had two different companies come to us with proposals. And so that is a number that could vary some, because we just got some material about a week ago from one of the companies that looked at all the different possibilities, not only more energy efficient, but for some of the windows that are very large, we are going to have a waist-high solid material from waist-high down, okay? And then we used windows from there up. And that would be cheaper to put in, and it wouldn't heat up as much in the hot weather. You wouldn't get as much solar gain in the sunny weather, but overall, it might be a better proposal. So their proposal was rather complicated, and so that we still have to price that a little more. So that could go up a little or down a little, depending on which proposal we have. But I think you saw one of them is a 28-page report or something like that.
Yeah.
From one of the companies, which luckily we have Keisha Lifton, who's on our committee, who's an architect, who is going through that. But she also has, other business to attend to this time of year. But she is going to work on that for us. The other four items are fairly firm numbers that we have. In the windows, this is the last part of the windows. This is the third part to replace basically all the windows in the building.
Okay, anybody else have comments or questions?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, my initial reaction is, we've been doing this for a while now,
Yeah.
and I agree with Paul that it really is kind of a model for how we'd like to manage things, and so my general inclination is to approve it. I'm a little concerned about the large jump up over what we've been doing historically. This is considerably more, so that's something that I'd have to get comfortable with.
Yeah. I think in the past, one was over 300 too, a couple of years ago. I don't know if we can check the history, but,
Yes, I remember
I think that
that.
sounds right.
yeah.
It's the second phase of the window project.
I would say the window project ones have all been higher.
Exactly.
Right.
So I'm ready to approve it if you think it's timely, or if you want to wait, then we wait.
Yeah, I don't know, what would we be approving, to put it on the warrant, or
Well,
just
yes, I
to
think it should
endorse
go
it?
on the warrant for sure, but I also support the article.
Yeah, and I guess I would say I'd rather see, well, and Frank said there's still some sorting out to do. I guess I'd rather see how they do the sorting out before I vote it. Otherwise, we're in a position of maybe changing our mind or voting something different, depending on how it changes.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to get a feel for the entirety before we
Yeah, I don't see a final recommendation here.
start voting things.
Right. Capital budget, someone from their committee has been to all of our meetings, and the last meeting we had, their whole committee attended our meeting. And we're going to meet with them again after the first of the year.
And Frank, I support this, too.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
I think when you tell us it's cooked, then
Yeah.
we should take a vote.
Okay.
And until then, I don't think you're telling us it's cooked yet.
The one item we want to look at a little bit more.
Yeah, okay.
But I can make a motion to put it on the warrant.
Yep. In the capital article, right?
Yeah, we have this omnibus capital article, I forget what number it is, 8 maybe,
I think that's right. 8 sounds.
so I'd move to put this in.
Last year was 7, Article 7.
So I'd move to put it in our omnibus capital article as one of the line items.
Great. Second
I'll
on that?
second it.
Okay.
Actually, I like the motion that David drafted, which was also to determine in consultation with advisory whether all or part of the request will be funded by a debt exclusion override. I don't know if that's,
Yeah, well, based on the discussion here, I don't think we're ready to
Yeah, he's
talk
just
about
including
whether
it.
I think we're assuming it's going to be capital, fair assumption, but if we're simply voting to put it on the warrant, that's all the motion is.
Right. We
Okay,
have a
great.
nice free cash number that our finance director was able to get to us in a timely way as opposed to in prior years. So maybe that we'd use free cash on this. And we may want to do a debt exclusion borrowing. There are all kinds of different ways to fund this. But I don't think we're there yet to talk about how to fund it.
Great.
So I want to, if I could, limit the motion only that this will be on the agenda for town meeting to discuss.
Great.
That's all.
Yeah, I agree with Paul.
But without a number
That's right.
attached to it yet.
Correct. The number would be added by capital program and advisory, and then the board as well.
Good.
Great.
So we got a motion?
Second.
John seconded, I think. All in favor? Great, thanks. Thank you. Good thought on that, Paul.
The next item was one that was in your packet last time. It's appropriation and feasibility, or appropriation for a feasibility study regarding housing in the town center, specifically the land located between the Pine Hill Cemetery and the ball fields on the incline. There's this, we had town council look into the process that it would take to make something like that happen, and we distributed that. And that's a town council opinion, so you would, if you want that released to the cemetery commission or the public, you would have to vote to release the opinion.
Well, certainly would want to have the cemetery commission have an opportunity to see the opinion. But I also gathered from that and from my own familiarity with the law that we need some kind of title exam on the subject property to find out if it was gifted with restrictions or what the restrictions are before we go too far down the road where it may not, the property may not even be available. So I would move to have the cemetery commission have access to the town council opinion without waiving the right of the town for attorney-client privilege with respect to the document.
So that's releasing it just to the cemetery commission?
Yes,
Yes.
but there's no,
Have the school building planning committee on this, Bob, or that's the open question?
thanks, Bob. But is anybody going to second the motion?
Second.
To let the cemetery commission see the legal opinion?
Subject to the confidentiality of the opinion, so does it go
Yes.
beyond the cemetery commission?
Yes.
Yeah. I would second that, or somebody already
Someone
seconded?
else did.
Okay.
did.
All in favor of that? Okay.
So can somebody give her a copy?
Yep,
Yeah.
do that.
I hope I'm past, I hope it's my turn or her turn. I've been passing it on.
Paul, you mentioned a title
And
search.
Susan, that's not a public document, right? That's.
Yeah, we need a commission of title search, because you got to find out if the property is even usable.
Okay.
Well, Bob just handed something out, Paul, which is the annual report, and it talks about giving the school committee care of certain land that's within the cemetery commissioners, as described in the school building planning committee report. And so I guess the question might be, maybe that report has some relevant information to this, because it does look like the town, at least in some respects, voted on some swapping or taking of
I believe
land
that's
from one to the other.
I believe that's so that there can be a Pine Hill School.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think this is the Pine Hill land.
Yeah. this-
Understood, but
Yeah. Hopefully
the
there's more
dimensions of
data.
that,
Yeah.
the boundaries of that are not determined by this. And so so when you do your title report, Paul, what you're going to get is something that says that the town of Sherborn owns a whole bunch of land, but you're still not going to know what committee, what committee or what branch of the town
Well,
that
if-
land is in.
If some of it is owned by the cemetery commission and some of it is owned by the Board of Selectmen, for example, or the school committee, there should have been recordings in the registry of deeds. And if there were not recordings in the registry of deeds, then the latest case law is that it remains where it was. This would be totally
So
ineffective.
you're saying there needs to be a recording to transfer land within a town from
Yes.
care of one committee to care of
It
another
has to be
committee?
a deed from one to the other. It has to be recorded. If it's not recorded, it's not effective.
Okay.
If you look at
There's a case on that.
number one in the opinion, addresses, I think, what,
But I'm most concerned that somebody gifted the property originally to the town under the condition that it only be used for cemetery purposes or only be used for school purposes.
Is that true?
Do we have that?
I don't know. I'm concerned that
Yeah.
that's the case, and
Right.
you won't know until you do a title search. So until you do a title search, you don't know whether or not the property can be diverted. That's not to say that a gift can't be diverted, but you have to go
Read it.
to the SJC under a cypre petition. It's a huge thing.
There's no mention of that in the 1957 annual report,
But this was
as far as we went.
acquired in the 1800s or
They started
something.
laying out the cemetery in 1833. The land was all plotted out
Right.
and marked and surveyed up in 1833. It finally they laid out the road, I'm sorry, Susan Tyler Cemetery Commission. They finally laid out the roads and opened it for the first burials in 1852. So it goes back to 1833, the land for the cemetery.
But whether it was all acquired at once and how it was acquired, and, as Paul points out, whether some of it was subsequently transferred to another committee, or how much of it the cemetery committee had versus the town as a whole, until somebody does more research, we're all guessing.
Doesn't go back further than 1957.
is,
Now, Bob, were you present there?
No,
Yes, a selectman then?
close. We were there a couple of years later.
Okay.
is that something the board wants us to do to start, right? now?
I think it's probably a little premature
Okay.
to do that. I mean,
Okay.
we know, I think we know, that's just me talking, but I think we know the general parameters of what Barbara says would be entailed in doing what would be required to do this project, and if it looks like this project has some momentum, then we'd have time to do the title work, which is
Okay.
going to cost some money. Maybe a lot of money, given, how old this title will be and the fact that it's in a municipality. And as Paul points out, they may not have had recorded deeds for all the transfers.
If they didn't record anything, it'll take about 10 minutes to do it. True?
Not necessarily. You're never going to know that they didn't record anything. The one thing you can't tell when you look at a title is what's not in there. You only know what's in there. Doesn't mean that something didn't happen that the examiner missed, or that wasn't indexed properly, or that you didn't look far enough back for. So,
So we would have to find this out before we could proceed with looking at it.
Yeah, it seems to me a
Feasibility
chicken,
Development, right?
a chicken and egg problem here, because I understand, I want to hear the proposal, and it should be presented so we know what we're talking about. But if we can't do it there, that's sort of fundamental. So before a lot of people spend a lot of energy, go to town meeting, do PowerPoint presentations, do all of this. If you can't do it, then everybody's time is wasted.
so you're interpreting town council's opinion, or maybe you have your own opinion, as saying there may be circumstances where you just flat out can't do it. There's no way through it. Because I read town council's opinion to say that if you dotted all the i's and crossed all the t's, there was an endpoint where you could get this done. It might take a lot of votes and procedures.
Not if it was gifted land, it's virtually impossible.
Okay, I mean, that's not what her opinion says, but I respect your experience on this,
Well,
Paul.
if you give me her opinion, I think there's a reference to that somewhere.
One thing
She does say whether it was by gift.
Yeah, she just states generally you need to determine how the town owns it. But in bullet point 1, she just lists or gift in the sequence of options.
Susan, was any of that land on the slope actually ever used for burials?
No question.
What does that mean?
That's not to say that it can't be used in the future.
Right, well, no, I asked you, was it ever used?
No,
Okay.
not that I've been able to.
So are there cemeteries that do bury people other than in, some ancient cultures?
Historically, there's a trend that there's more and more people are being cremated. And so therefore, yes, there are areas, and presently, if you go up to the top, you'll see areas where there are people, and there's little niches all within the outcroppings of the ledge that are already in the active area of the cemetery. And they have plaques on the wall, the rock face and such. So at this point, yes. You're correct, there is nobody actively buried down in the subject land. There are people that are buried at the top of this cliff. There are lots at the top of the cliff that are already presently sold, that have all been surveyed out, laid out into saleable lots. Has there anything been done on this land going down? No, that's actually would be the next place where the cemetery could expand to. Because if you go up there, and I'm more than happy to take anybody up there, we've built out to the right as you drive up the hill, you'll see the stone wall boundaries. To the back, we've built up to the boundaries, to the stone wall. We now have this expansion project that's been started, this enlargement project that started 6 years ago. Once that's done and used, all you have is that area where you can get some full burials in, but most of it would be for cremations, all in pathways up along the rock face. That's it for the town. And Section 10 of Mass General Law 114 clearly states that the towns have to provide for burial places for the residents within the town. Now, Sherborn does have 8 cemeteries, and the other ones are all historic and full. There is no other space. This is Pine Hill Cemetery, is what we have. with no foreseeable future as to where else we're going to expand. And I will point out, I do believe it was the town of Hopkinton this past year, they needed more cemetery land for expansion because it's getting tight in Massachusetts and in New England areas as far as when lands be getting expensive. Hopkinton just spent, I believe it was Hopkinton, $2 million on buying a parcel of land. And boy, weren't the residents furious when they found out it was going for a cemetery. But that's what we have.
So the answer is no, people aren't buried on the slope yet?
People are-
Okay.
No, they're not buried on the slope, they're buried on the top.
But that's a bit of a trick question, so let me just take that a little bit further. Is all this land one parcel?
It's all one parcel.
So people are buried on this land?
Oh, people are buried on the land, yes,
Yes.
not on the particular parcel.
But that's not a separate parcel, you said?
No.
So on the parcel that's been the cemetery from the 1800s or whatever, there are people buried on there?
Absolutely, there's about 3,500.
Yes, so that triggers a requirement for an act of the legislature before you can use.
So, okay, so you guys are up against death and taxes on this one.
And the legislature, oh, sorry.
So Frank and Bob, why don't you,
If you're going to be doing this kind of a search for that little parcel, the slope, I'd look at all town land downtown to make sure we own it, and do something with it. I mean, including the ball fields, including the town forest land, including any other land that the town may own, to make sure that we know what we have and we have clear title.
I think we're getting into this,
Title we have, so that we have some idea what the options are if we ever wish to use it.
but that may be another warrant article. you know.
Well, no, I'm just saying, if you're going to be digging in, you might as well.
Well, but I mean, maybe that's a productive article to have to appropriate the funds to do that kind of a title study. We've kind of backed into this. You guys deserve your chance to explain what you're here for, and I'm sorry we kind of got off track, but please start, Bob. Yeah, that'd be great.
That issue did not come up in 1956 when town meeting
Yeah, sure, please do.
voted to transfer with the agreement of the cemetery commissioners to transfer the land. They said it was unnecessary. I'll quote it when Frank gets finished.
They said what was unnecessary, Bob?
Well, here, I'll read it to you. Let's see. Here we go. The cemetery commissioners, and I'm quoting, have determined that such land, Pine Hill School, is no longer required for cemetery purposes. That was the amount. You can't tell from town report what kind of discussion there was with it, but it doesn't look like it was terribly elaborate. It's pretty succinct. But, okay, I will begin. Good evening.
Excuse me, is there a copy so that I could have for the cemetery commissioner?
I didn't see you there, Sue, and I gave your copy to Diane. You got to sit and where it's more obvious.
I've been sitting in that corner for 20 years.
I know, but I didn't see you, I'm sorry.
Please continue this.
Okay, you have in front of you the material that Frank and I passed out about a 3-month effort between Frank and myself, which is maybe irrelevant, but a small part of the approximately 100 years that Frank and I, between us, have lived in Sherborn. Looking at us...
And done amazing things for the town, both of you. Thank you very much for all of your service for so many years.
Thank you. Looking at us, I'm hoping that some of you might find that hard to believe. But at least, certainly with Frank.
Mr. Chair, will you take a motion on that?
Okay. For a good part of this time, we have heard and been involved in wishful thinking about the town center, which doesn't lend itself to an obvious solution, or otherwise you wouldn't see us here tonight. This is despite a great deal of discussion over the years, surveys, a number of study committees. Many people agree, or seem to agree, that change is, for the town center will be a good thing. They also agree, and probably to the same number, that we need water and sewer to make the town center viable and improvable, as well as that we can't afford it. This is what prompts Frank and I to make a proposal that, if it's successful, could get the ball rolling. And we all know where the parcel of land is now, and the part of the Pine Hill Cemetery, the steep part, could more appropriately be called, in my opinion, Pine Ledge Hill instead of just Pine Hill, because it's a lot of ledge there. On the optimistic side, it's surprising what an imaginative architect can do with what appears to be unusable land. Now, Sue will make an argument that that's not unusable, but for most reasons, it appears to be good for sledding, but not much else. We have walked the property with 2 local architects who agree we could build there, but they have some reservations. We also walked the property with the planning board. We have permission to ask town council for opinions as to whether state law permits this kind of a transaction. And apparently it does, with permission of the Cemetery Commission and town meeting. And there is some precedent here in Sherborn for this. As we already brought up, a 1957 special town meeting approved the transfer of cemetery land to the town for building Pine Hill School. The cemetery commissioners, and I'm quoting here, have determined that such land is no longer required for cemetery purposes. Money was appropriate, $10,000, for that purpose, but there is no mention of a transaction. Now, I don't know what that means, and I don't know that there's anybody here or even in town that would know what that means. Nor did we see any mention of legislative approval. It could be an oversight, or maybe we didn't look far enough. Gino did the research for us. But there was no mention of the actual turnover, the transaction, whether it involved the $10,000 or was just signed over. Nor, as I said, nor did we see any mention of legislative approval. There are a number of other issues which would require local approval: Board of Health, Concom, town meeting, and I'm sure there's others. However, given the difficulty of doing anything in our town center and the potential of a significant down payment dedicated to town center water and sewer, we feel it's worth investigating. And Frank can
So
explain.
in a nutshell, what Bob is saying is, here's an opportunity to maybe jumpstart rethinking what our downtown might look like. And as he pointed out, and as you're all aware, these discussions have been going on for years, and no one seems to want to take the lead. So here's an opportunity for the town to take the lead and take a parcel of land, and here's the ball fields you're all familiar with. Here's the cemetery over here. Here's Pine Hill School. And this parcel of land that Bob is talking about is about 3.5 acres situated right there. This is the steep part of the hill. And access could be off Cemetery Lane, could be off of Pine Hill Lane, could have something combining, connecting the two for access to garages or the parcels. We've talked with real estate brokers, and although it's a challenge because of the slope for development, it's also an opportunity because hillside development can bring a premium price, especially heading west. So this parcel, if it were available for the town to develop, you would get an initial slug of money because of the sale of the parcel, and depending on how many units you could put in here, you'd be getting continuing tax revenues. How many units? 10, 15, it depends on what an architect could do there. But that would be 10 or 15 units, estimates $75,000 to $100,000 per unit for the land, maybe $1 million initial payment to the town, which would be a good way to start exploring the investment in the infrastructure downtown, which would serve not only the downtown area immediately, but also be available for a proposed water district, which would come right up here to the town hall. So that's what motivated Bob and I to try to get something going downtown, and here's the financial resources to possibly do it. Now, there's other town land that we own, and that's why I was suggesting earlier, if we're having difficulty getting title to this parcel right here, let's look at all the parcels the town owns downtown, including the ball fields, to make sure we know what our options are. If these were gifted and we can no longer develop it or use it for any other purpose than what it's being used for, then it's all academic. But I would doubt that that was the case, but we should look into it.
Okay. And so your proposal for the warrant article is what? You're looking for
A sum of money to explore options using this parcel as well as perhaps other town land to explore how this idea of transferring town land, creating money out of it, and use it for a down payment on the reconstruction of downtown.
It says on my sheet, Frank, here, citizen sponsors. Does that mean you're looking at a citizen article, or
No,
you're asking the board to?
We've met, excuse me, go ahead. Yes,
Defer to you.
we've met with the planning board, and I think, Paul, it would be best to be a planning board article. I think this has to be done in the context of the plan that the planning board is developing. It shouldn't be a one-off. It should be in conjunction with their efforts, and it would seem to me if the Board of Selectmen are interested in downtown, which I think is a very high priority for you all, maybe sponsored jointly by the Board of Selectmen and the planning board.
Mentioning the planning board suggests to me, asking you, what is the property zone for now? Do we need to make a zoning change in order to?
That would require zoning, yes.
It's zoned for permanent residence.
It's 1 acre zoning downtown generally, and it's, right now, it's zoned RA.
It's close to residential zoning.
It's zoned RA right now specifically, but we'd have to look at modifying that zoning to make sure that we could achieve what we're trying to do.
all you're asking for this year is a study, is funding.
To look at the options.
To look at the option. You're not asking for zoning change, you're not asking for permission to do anything with the land. It's really just a good idea or an idea that some people might think is good that requires some funding to really assess it.
Yep. In conjunction with the planning board's initiative to develop a plan, we would recommend this be done also.
We're also of the opinion that this is dramatic enough that it would warrant a special town meeting. I mean, I don't know if I mentioned that or not, but in 1957, there was a special town meeting to authorize the change in ownership from,
But Bob, you're talking about the actual
yeah,
Transfer, you're not talking about...
Once we get the
Your
study,
funding article is for this
Yes.
spring's town meeting.
yes.
Okay.
And this study would include all the stakeholders. I mean, we're talking planning board, we talk with you people, we talk with others who have an interest, real estate professionals and so
Cemetery
forth.
Commission.
The Cemetery Commission, yes. We'd have to reach out to the Recreation Commission. We'd have to talk with the school committee. I mean, there may be interest in the part of the school for part of this land, if they ever look at expansion beyond their current footprint. Residents in the immediate area, also business people downtown, because I think it's leading to how the downtown might look differently 5 to 10 years from now. We've shared this with business people downtown, and they're kind of interested. They're willing to step up to the plate if the town is also willing to step up and make it happen.
That's right. There was a surprising, not, well, it was surprising to me because I'm uninformed, but the business community is in favor of doing things, and from what I've been told, they're willing to invest. And this is the kind of mutual beneficial effort we seek. I mean, you know, so taxpayers don't have to pay for it all.
Well, clearly we want to have residents in the downtown area for this kind of development as opposed to being scattered all over the town. So it's in the right location. And it would benefit the businesses because it would provide more customers for the business. So I understand their logic.
Right on.
Whether this is the best parcel or not, Paul, we don't know. It may not be.
It's a discussion to get started anyway.
But it's a parcel that has had little use, and at one point in 1957, the Cemetery Commission said it was unused land, surplus.
That was the Pine Hill.
No, they said that, yeah, the property that the school is now on was unused.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not that.
Not that property, because it didn't get transferred.
No, this did not get transferred, but this was surplus land.
Well, we assumed they get transferred, I don't know. We haven't done that.
We think it did
You're right,
get
John,
transferred.
this was surplus land to the cemetery. Okay.
Mike, I think you make a great point, which is this is going to involve lots of stakeholders in the whole town. So having it discussed at the town meeting, I think, is a good idea, even when it's in the conceptual stage. So I support this, having this warrant article as a discussion, right?
And this would be, if it's a citizen and planning board petition, they would be the sponsors, and they would present it to us in an article form, and then we would put it on the warrant.
Yeah, and I'm comfortable with the Board of Selectmen sponsoring it as well, just to have a discussion. This is a feasibility analysis. It's an interesting and creative approach to trying to fund a downtown water and/or sewer district. And so I would support the Board of Selectmen putting it on the warrant as well.
Well, before we
Is town meeting the best place for that
I think
discussion?
especially-
Because when I was with the COA folks, they suggested we sponsor, and I might have mentioned for last meeting, we sponsor a conversation on growth in the downtown. And I think, you know, town meeting is just so constricted in terms of how the conversation takes place, and there's little patience for things that run on and on and on. And this is something that just is going to need a lot of time to work through. Maybe there's an argument to be said that you do this offline.
Well, but I think, as Bob mentioned earlier, a special town meeting might be the appropriate venue for looking not only at this, but also what the planning board is going
Yeah,
to
but
present.
you want to get this money so you can get to the point where you can have a special town
Right.
meeting to vote the sale of the land.
Well, I think can't you write the check tonight?
Well, I think this year's
I
test.
think the other issue is that the
You have your
check
checkbook?
the check just got bigger because there's going to be a lot of legal expense.
I understand that. No,
And
let's get the ball rolling.
you know, I would love to have the town say to us, go ahead and spend that money because we think it's important enough. I mean, we could probably do it on our own, but, you know, it's,
Mark, you're absolutely right. If this is only exposed to town meeting, it's not enough time. I think that if we get support, I mean, there's a lot of, we can be spending a lot of time just looking at this thing conceptually right now, without spending anything. I mean, we have a lot of stakeholders that have an interest. We get the cemetery people, get the school people, get the recreation people talking. We intend to do that.
but I sure like to have a high level of confidence that legally we can go forward before we get everybody all dressed up.
We won't start until you tell us.
It's a chicken and egg, but in terms of getting something on the warrant for this year, we have to start planning now. So even if there are all these other things that happen between now and then, if it's going to happen in May, you need to start the process of talking about an article like you're doing tonight, I think. We do have a member of the audience, Commissioner
Wait, before you
Tyler.
jump up,
Okay.
I wanted to follow up on his, I want to hear what she has to say, but, my comment about this is they just dumped a whole bunch of stuff that looks like two completely different and complicated projects that the town needs to look at, that they're tangling them together.
Which are those?
Downtown sewer, water.
I believe that's the water commissioner's.
I think Bob
Is it
just
getting
handed
roped
this
into
out. Bob handed this out
Oh,
also, or Frank did.
But are they implying that it should get roped into that as part of the study?
I don't know what you're referring to.
The water and sewer and everything.
No, there's nothing on.
I think
Nothing to
Sean's
do with
point
it?
is there's two potential articles at town meeting. One is to appropriate money to study the idea of using town land for development, whether it's this land or some other land. The second is coming from Roger Demler and his group, and that would be to budget money to take the next steps in terms of the planning for downtown water and/or sewer. Those are
So they just happen to get dumped in front of me at the same time?
No, they didn't happen to. Frank handed this to you.
I didn't hand anything to anyone.
Oh, who handed this to us?
I don't know.
Bob did.
Bob did then. Bob handed it to us. But that's fine. It's just, it's not part of their article, Sean.
It's
Okay.
item 6K on the agenda.
All right,
Sean, forget the water and sewer material.
all right.
That's not
So,
part of
but,
this stuff.
so what still becomes a little complicated is you're pinning it to one very specific property or saying all of downtown.
Town-owned land
Right.
downtown.
So you went really narrow and then really broad, because town-owned land in downtown is all of town forest, which you're talking a couple hundred acres.
Cemetery land, recreation land, any other land the town may own.
Right.
Can I
So you
help?
took a really narrow focus and/or
This-
really broad.
Okay, can I help you
Yeah.
work through this, Sean? My understanding of what Bob and Frank are asking about is that they would like the town to appropriate some money to study the use of surplus town-owned land in the center of town for purposes of development with housing particularly. They also have conceived of an idea that involves using a specific parcel of land for a specific project. They've gotten a little ways down the road in investigating that, and part of the study would be to look at that parcel in particular, along with, Frank saying, other potential parcels that could be used.
Right. I guess what I'm saying is you kill the project when you start. When you lead with that, you're going to turn people off really fast. When you lead with that parcel, and then all the rest.
Because it lets people...
You should start with all the rest, and this includes one of them.
Because we're good at figuring out ways to not do things, and that just gives
We're
them
really
a
good at it.
specific focus of...
Right.
What would you recommend, Sean? I hear you. What do you lead with?
I wouldn't lead with that parcel.
Okay, what would you
It
lead
could be part of it.
Well, a generic article to spend money for studying town-owned parcels, and then as part of the presentation, say, here are examples of things, and this is one of the examples.
Advisory is very much opposed now in the last, as they've told me, in the last year or so, they've developed that they want to know specifically what a study is for, and if it works, how much it's going to cost. That's advisory's opinion, and it, and if you think back to Western Avenue Study Committee, that's where they're coming from.
We just do studies for free.
And unsurprisingly, I share that opinion.
Well, Sean, let me get back to Sean. You said leading with that, it was interesting, you say that it would be dead in the water. What would we lead with? What would you recommend? Because we're including not only this, but also all town-owned land.
I know, which includes the 30 acres next to my house. I wouldn't lead with that either, but
30 acres next year, Butler Street garage?
Right.
Okay.
which is fine. You should study it, along with the couple hundred acres that's on the other side of the cemetery. That parcel, yeah, that particular parcel will, I would predict, will just shoot the whole, no one's going to hear anything else.
Well, here's
Because there's so much more involved with just that one particular parcel.
You mean the hill?
Yeah, the hill.
There's three issues that come to my mind, and maybe you have answers with it, in regard to this parcel, just to pick up on what Sean is concerned. The first is, I'd really like to hear from the police chief about the presence of so many houses so close to the school. Does it meet security for our kids? Because our first goal here has got to be the children, the education of our children, and the safety of our children. The second concern I would have is, what does the school committee say about that parcel? Because of its proximity to the school, that may be where they want to expand. It may be that they have their plans on it. I'd like to hear what the school committee has to say. And the third component here is the cemetery commission. I'd like to know what the cemetery commission's plans are for the parcel, if any. And it seems to me that the police chief, the school committee, and the cemetery commission
And recreation, Paul.
and recreation.
I said, all stakeholders.
So it seemed to me, in all deference to what Chuck was saying about he's ready to go forward, I'm a little more hesitant. I'd like to hear some buy-in from some of the other major stakeholders who would be immediately affected by that particular parcel. But on the issue of having a study to see where we could put housing and maybe some mixed-use stuff in the downtown area, I'm in favor of that because I think that would benefit the community as a whole.
Well, and that's what this warrant is for. It's feasibility. The question is, Sean is suggesting that it not be let in with this 3.5-acre parcel, but any town-owned land near the downtown area. But the warrant article is a feasibility analysis. It's not for any specific purpose. So I don't, at least as I read the warrant article description in item 6B, it's a feasibility study for 3.5 acres on Pine Hill or surrounding area.
I think that's our intent, but we're not, it's not set in cement.
We're going to exclude Ward Park, okay? Because
Yeah.
I think that would be off limits, right, Jim?
Well, I mean, if it's going to include everything, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're seeing in a real small microcosm here is how good we are as a town at taking shots at any good idea and trying to poke holes in it from the start. I really appreciate that you guys have done so much thinking on this. I think it's a great service to the town to be creative like this. It doesn't mean that anything's actually going to be done. You know, we can't close a road and study that because our motives are questioned, and you can't propose going up on Pine Hill because, you know, people are concerned about all kinds of speculative things. Good to study it, but not bad to talk about it. And I do appreciate that you, at least from my view, that you've done all this effort. We did have Commissioner Tyler who wanted to say something.
Yes, Susan Chapman, and again, I believe in talking things through also, and that's my point to my comment here. The Cemetery Commission, as a elected body of this town, has never been communicated with regarding this project. I happened to be on December 2nd at a planning board meeting regarding something else, when the town planner said, "Oh, Susie, don't leave yet, you might want to stick around for this one." And sadly, I had someplace to be, so I gave it exactly 5 minutes, and that's all I've had. And so the Cemetery Commission has not even had a chance to put this on an agenda to discuss it, nor have any of the proponents come and discuss it. We're just hearing things off the side. No, there's no communication. I did get an email from Bob Delaney the next day, back on December 3rd, saying, "Oh, sorry, we wanted to get all the negotiating done ahead of time, but we'll keep you in the loop." Again, the Cemetery Commission, who has been charged with the care of this land, and all cemeteries in town, have not been communicated with. And it really is a little upsetting.
Well, you clearly knew about it, Susan, you just said
Well, I
you'd
knew
heard
about it
about it.
because
Okay.
I happened to be at a planning board meeting regarding because I was notified as a butter for another project.
Well, it's
have-
December 22nd, so what you're saying is you should have been first.
No, I'm just saying.
Well, this is the first time they've been in front of us, right? And they've gone to the planning board about a week ago?
Yeah, and I was at traffic safety, and, we were kept in the loop on that also. Anyways, it just, I think we deserve, the cemetery commission deserves the dignity or the right,
So
the
let me
privilege
ask
of
you,
having the proponents come before us and explain exactly what it is.
I don't put-
Instead of it being hearsay.
I think everybody agrees with that, that's
Thank you.
my
well,
impression.
I don't,
give it
because
to
if town council came back and said it's illegal, it's dead. I mean, there's no point in wasting people's time until we found out whether or not it was even legal. You know, what initially we did is we went to Gino, town planner, and said, is there a reason that this can't be done? And then we went to Roger Bemler to say, you know, just, if we could get a significant amount of money out of this, would this be a benefit to the town? And the answer was yes. And we went step by step. And until we had something that was real, there wasn't any sense in asking the cemetery commission to rule on this until it was something that we actually thought could happen. And, okay.
We're going to support it. Let's go.
Hang on, Frank, only, just one more comment, perhaps just back to your comment. I want to support this. So don't get my comments wrong. I want to support it. I want people to support it. So that was, the point of my comment was if we don't lead with, because whether we study that, we should study all those properties. We should. So I want to make sure it doesn't get pigeonholed. I know you're looking at the whole picture. I want to make sure that it doesn't get pigeonholed as it's just that piece of property. We're going to spend $50,000 studying what some people might think they already know.
But John, if you look at land around the town center and try and attach a value to it, I mean, there is nothing that would bring more value to the town than that hill would with, 15 condominiums or townhouses on it. You could get a significant amount of money. Now, what that means, is it 500,000, a million, million and a half? I have no idea, because until we get some money and have somebody look at it professionally, who knows what they're doing, and we've walked it with the planning board, we've walked it with architects, and people think, well, it's interesting. There are no other options, or at least none that anybody has thought of. And so we bring this up as a thought for the town to consider, to raise some money to do something in the town center.
So, setting the legal thing aside for a minute, to spend this money to determine the feasibility of developing the parcel, wouldn't that be something the developer would do?
Yeah,
I mean, ordinarily, wouldn't you just say, here it is, it's $2 million, you decide, if you buy it, you got to figure out how to
Yeah.
develop it.
well, that's sort of what's in the back of our minds, but it's a little premature until we know that, number one, we don't have to go to the legislature, that we don't, that it's legal to sell a piece of town property for development. We just didn't know those things, and we still don't.
But let's say we had free and clear title to
Yeah.
it and we could sell it. Wouldn't your NOI be sell however many acres it is
Yeah.
of Pine Hill Ledge,
Yeah.
right?
It's just such an obvious use of some property that, from the cemetery's point of view, we could swap some town forests behind their land and give them land that they could use more easily.
That would definitely take an act of the legislature.
Well, sure, fine.
Well, so to Mark's point, it sounds to me like what you're looking for, again, is a planning study
Yeah.
to figure out what's feasible to do with this piece of land and potentially other piece of land, and, you know, what the obstacles would be. I mean, we can count on town volunteers to do that, but when they show up, they get shouted down and questioned, which is our prerogative and everybody's prerogative.
Yeah.
But I think if you bring in outside expertise on this, sometimes you get a more objective and maybe a deeper, less invested analysis. And I think that's what Bob and Frank are suggesting.
That is what we're suggesting, and to me, in my uneducated way, it's inconceivable that the school would want to use that property. I mean, what could you do with it? You could build a wall and fill it in, and maybe have some extra play space. That would be frightfully expensive and very wasteful. I mean, this is a good use of a piece of property that would benefit the entire town, and not just anybody.
But would this exercise answer all of Paul's questions? Or would it just say, these are the problems that would need to be solved? And I guess the answer is we would want it.
Seems to me that the answers to those questions come easier if you actually know some of the facts. I mean,
Exactly.
Paul's, suggested that maybe the police chief is not going to want houses next to a school. Well, Dover has houses next to their school. Why couldn't we have houses next to our school? But maybe that's worth asking the police chief. I don't think the planner's going to, a planning consultant's going to help with that. But the other issues, potentially, yeah, where would you put an access road? Could you swap another parcel? Is there a better suited parcel for a cemetery than a hill that's got a 45-degree angle, and it, potentially is developable? Maybe it's not developable. Maybe they point out that it's in danger of rock slides or some other issue that prevents it from being developed. So it seems to me that somebody with expertise applied to this, or we could,
But we have to convince the advisory committee that to put some trust or faith without something specific, and they don't, they're trying not to do that, as is their job.
Well, you had something intriguing in here, which was possible support from Sherborn Business Association for
Yeah.
funding. I mean, that might be able to go a long way to seeding something that...
They couldn't, I mean, that they are, we're fairly sure that they would contribute. I mean, individuals there have indicated that, but, I mean, a contribution from them after they've given out all their scholarships is going to be maybe $5,000 or something. And, you'll get nothing for $5,000. I mean, we're going to need, I don't know what, 25, 50?
The reason that's there, Mike, is that it was suggested in our discussions with business people downtown, that they may be willing to partner.
That makes sense.
I mean, they're supportive, they want something done. And I think everyone in town wants something done downtown.
And maybe I'm high, I don't, that's not my
Is the
I mean, I'll get $10. If we could pass the hat.
Well, it's already contributed to maps.
Okay. Peter, you had a question or something?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to go back to the beginning of your conversation because I'm somewhat mystified, and I don't want you to take this as a challenge, but I'm somewhat mystified about not releasing town council's opinion. I imagine there's some reason, something in there that would preclude or that you don't want to release it. But my question really goes to, if these gentlemen are the ones that requested the opinion, shouldn't they at least be allowed to have the opinion? And if they're having the opinion, why wouldn't the rest of the public?
Well, we got the opinion about a half an hour ago.
That's a good, you're done. Okay, thank you.
We haven't seen it, Peter.
No, he just answered, thank you. You haven't studied it, you don't.
And also, Peter, just to clarify, it was requested by the town administrator. It was not requested by these gentlemen.
We don't even care to see it.
Okay, all right, but thank you for the explanation. Yeah, you haven't had time to review it, that's fine. Thank you.
Agreed.
Okay. Thanks for coming in. I don't know that we
Have fun.
got very far with this, but thank you.
We went beyond our time.
But by that, I mean, Bob, I'm not sure sort of what the next step on this might be for you, but hopefully this was some guidance for you.
Oh, I can help. Please talk to the school committee and the cemetery
Commission.
commission and the recreation commission. That would make a big difference to me if they were on board with this. I mean, you said
That's a good
you
suggestion.
couldn't conceive that the school would have any use for it, and if that's the case, then it should be routine to pick up their approval of selling that parcel. It would be nice to...
We're not talking about selling.
But I think that this is going to obviously need to be refined so that whoever is at town meeting knows exactly what it is that they're voting on. And my preference would be more specific than
Well, I would like to be too. I don't have the information to be more specific.
But as you know, I think it's a great idea.
Given the background, and as long as Frank and I have been involved in matters here in town, which is a long time. I mean, I was on the school committee in the 1960s, but you know, there's never, the town hasn't changed. The town center hasn't changed, and it needs to be if we're going to be able to move on and thrive, and not run into our max of tax.
Sean, would you spend some time with us?
Always.
Good call.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mike?
Yes, sir.
I just want to mention that
We come to one of your
with these articles,
Okay.
if you aren't supporting them enough to get them on the warrant, they have a right, they can go through a citizen petition process. So at some point when we flush it out, if you're not including it on the warrant, we just at least want to give them the information that that's the avenue they should take.
And enough time
Have
to
enough time to do
collect
it.
the signatures. they need.
I also think if the planning board really is and has decided to sponsor an article like this, they can come to us with that as well as the citizens.
Right. Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Yeah. Can you define that a little? So we could not sponsor it. The planning board can sponsor it. It's still their way in on the.
The selectmen determine what goes on the warrant, other than citizens petitions. Citizens petitions have a right to go on the warrant if there's a certain number of
Right.
signatures. Any other town committee that wants to propose a warrant article, the selectmen have to authorize it to go onto the warrant.
Okay, but that doesn't make us the proponent.
That's right. It's different. There's a distinction between saying we will place it on the warrant to have the town vote on it and saying we support the article.
Right.
And there's another level, which is there's certain articles which we would sponsor, potentially.
And we have several more opportunities to decide if we're going to be
Absolutely.
that
Yeah.
proponent. Right?
Yes.
Yes.
I
What's
got
that
right.
date?
Yes, pretty good
February.
summary. There's a difference between articles that come forward
Right.
from town officials and town boards and town committees. The history of the board here has been to defer to them if they want to have something on the warrant. We, as the gatekeeper, will accommodate the other boards. It's different when you're dealing with unofficial groups who aren't town officials. Normally, they should get a sponsor from some town board or some committee, and it may be us. It can be us.
And at this, quick question for David. At this point, the planning board is not a sponsor of this warrant article?
No, they're not. They haven't voted
weighed
to
in
be a
on it.
co-sponsor
Right.
yet.
Great.
Yeah, it was just something that they discussed, I guess.
Right.
All right, so next, David, you want to go to the next one? 6C, I guess?
Yeah, this one was brought up about downtown beautification, and there's several items that were roped in here. I'll just read that. The town may want to consider appropriating specific funding for downtown town center beautification, which would include addressing beautification issues year-round, not just snow plowing or snow removal. Would be enforcing sign bylaws, maintaining banners, and small repairs of about $10,000. For a larger comprehensive project, it could be expanded to include other items such as engineering for certain projects, granite curbing, street paving, repaving Cemetery Lane and the playground parking area and fencing, finish the sidewalk from Woodahaven, line painting, replace intersection control and lighting at North Main and Elliott Street, which is actually, I think that's been bumped. It's been proposed and bumped for the last two town meetings. decorative light posts and lighting throughout, and handicap compliant crosswalks. And the price tag we put on this at this early stage would be $1 million.
So David, to the extent that I was the selectman that suggested this to you, the part that I suggested was the $10,000 part, not the million part. What I came up with, and I appreciate that you've kind of riffed on that and added a bunch of other things that are on the wish list, but my thought was, we've got a town center with some businesses in it. Some of those businesses struggle a little bit, other ones do pretty well, and we've even got some buildings that are empty a fair amount. Part of it is because when you drive through the town center, it's not the most attractive place. You could say it's quaint and rural, or you could just say it's a little bit shabby and uncared for. We've got sign bylaws that are not enforced. I know that. I was on the zoning board for years. We would renew sign permits, we'd put conditions in the permits, and the conditions wouldn't be observed or enforced. We have a building inspector. We could be enforcing zoning to make sure that people do what they're supposed to do. We also have opportunities to do a little beautification and keep things cleaned up in the center of town. I don't think it would take a large amount of money. It may take more direction of our CM&D staff to focus a little more on keeping that nice looking. So that's one end of it. The other end of it, I think, as you point out, David, is we have some issues that are known with the light at Elliott and in Main Street, including the ramp and the signal being in need of replacement. I don't know that I would want to combine that into the article I was talking about. I don't even know if the article I was talking about is worth pursuing, but I do think if we're talking about having something of a focus on the center of town, that's a piece of it that shouldn't cost much and really deserves some attention. And most of the towns around here pay way more attention to their center of town in terms of how it looks than we do.
I'll just add that the second part of this, the part that you indicated didn't come from you.
Right.
The second part of it is a perfect subject for a grant application. That's the Small Streets Grant Program in MassWorks. It's exactly what the grant is there for. Things like granite curbing, fencing, parking areas, repaving. That's what the grant's there for. And they have a set aside for small communities. So it's worth maybe taking that piece, the $1 million piece, out and seeing if we can get grant funding for that by applying for a grant. If the grant's turned down, then maybe a year from now we can look at seeing if the town wants to spend this kind of money itself. But in the meantime, why don't we first see if we can get state funds?
I mean, is there an argument to sort of think about, and the grant's a great idea, but isn't there an argument to sort of think about it the same way we do Pine Hill, and to start just putting some amount aside and spending, because we know that there's going to be stuff to do.
You're talking about the capital project side?
Yeah, it could be a modest amount. It could be $25,000 a year, but to at least sort of get the ball rolling on this.
You're talking about the capital items listed in the second half of this.
No, I'm talking more about, well,
Maybe some of them, right?
all the miscellaneous stuff.
Yeah.
That doesn't get taken care of, that does make a difference.
The items that Mike disavowed.
Yeah, well, it's not that I think it's a bad idea, it's just that my idea was much smaller than what David's put here, and I also think if you're trying to sell something to town meeting, putting a price tag of $1 million on it and talking about hanging banners in the same sentence is probably not a good way to sell
Especially
something.
since the Sherborn Business Association just did that for us.
Right.
Yeah, well, they did that, so that part is probably not necessary, and that has certainly helped appearance. David, we now have the compact, right? So the compact for capital planning, does that give us a leg up on this kind of grant that Paul is talking about?
For small streets,
it would.
yeah.
Yeah, and so if we're doing capital planning, maybe we have a category that's a downtown infrastructure category that's, overlaps some with other categories, but also has its own scope.
Okay.
So perhaps some of this money can be used for planning as well.
What money?
Well, if you're rolling it back to the 10,000 that you were talking about, a portion of that may very well be used for planning. Because the compact's fun to talk about, but David will quickly run out of time as he's running around looking for grants, and, I mean, you might actually need to spend a little bit of money.
I think they gave us some money in connection with the compact, didn't they, David?
Yeah.
But as we start ramping up and asking for money for, more paving, a couple $100,000 for a
That's different.
street light,
Yeah, that's different.
and you might need to
Do
use some of
design
that
work.
money
Yeah.
that's, dedicated to the general downtown to try to get that return on it. Because it's clear the town's not going to pay a couple $100,000 for that light, but we need it.
Yeah.
We need crosswalks. And yeah, the business association's was the one that ponied the money up for the biggest safety improvement we made, which was that lighted crosswalk. That was the Sherborn Business Association.
Yep.
They also paid for the banners and the brackets,
Right.
but we had agreed that we would incur the cost to put them up for them. And we did that, but now they blow down, and we're still trying to get some people. We're still on the hook for finding somebody to go up there and fix those brackets.
So how often, just out of curiosity, how often a year does CM&D sweep the center of town, clean the sidewalks in the center of town, deal with the landscaping along the edge of the road or the curbs or any of that?
Yeah, it's probably.
Never, once?
I mean, no, it's definitely done several times in the spring.
It's more than you think.
Yeah.
Is it?
I mean,
Yeah.
we just came off them spending a couple of weeks picking up the leaves from,
No, I know that.
they start close to Douses, they do all of North Main and part of Elliott right through down. I mean, that's a couple of weeks,
Yep.
a decent amount of the crew.
And that-
They helped a lot with the playground because they have assets.
I'm not criticizing the work, Sean. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, if you look at priorities around town, and we had a complaint a couple of weeks ago about litter on another road that was sort of the entrance to town that David and Ed dealt with, but, just a higher level of awareness of
Right.
what's going to make our town more attractive to people when they want to sell their house, when they're thinking of opening a business here, when they're thinking of investing in their business here, when they're thinking of stopping their car and going to a business here. It's got to look halfway nice.
It does.
Yeah, so.
So I'll edit this and take that second portion out. And just
Yeah.
move it forward with the 10,000 amount?
Yeah, I mean, it's just for talking purposes.
Okay.
Why not?
Sure, why not?
Okay, next one. I'm on this one too.
This one was fix Sowen Street, Washington intersection. This would be a capital project and probably came out of the discussions with
Came
Sanger.
completely out of the discussions, but if Samhain, Washington is so impossible to navigate, as several of the people who spoke at our last meeting indicated, then we ought to be doing something about it.
Okay.
That's my thought. If people don't think it's worth doing something about, then it may not be as bad as people indicated, but somebody who's afraid to have their kid, turn out of the driveway, who says you take your life in your hand every time you turn, and these are multiple people who said that. It never occurred to me that was such a difficult intersection. It's not a great intersection,
Right.
and if there's ways to make it better, maybe it's worth the investment.
This is,
Oh, go ahead, Paul, I'm sorry.
well, I've talked a lot, I'll defer to you.
A couple years ago, I was at a traffic safety committee meeting where I think Susie was there as well, and they were talking about this intersection and Lake Street, and the discussion really focused on exactly what you're talking about, the sight lines. That is an intersection that I use regularly, and that the sight line for traffic proceeding westbound on 16, even people trying to comply with the speed limit, they can't see what's pulling into that intersection. So I think you focused on something that traffic safety, at least a couple of years ago, agreed with.
Are you talking about Sanger or Samhain now?
Sawin,
Okay,
and
all right.
yeah.
Because Sanger's got that same issue too.
yeah, Sanger does as well, yeah.
But I was talking on Samhain, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say, that this should go to traffic safety first.
Agreed.
I agree.
And I'm personally quite hesitant about securing easements or properties. And it would make a big difference to me on this article if we had the property owner there at the corner willing to provide some land, as opposed to having a hostile eminent domain taking of the land. So to some extent, I'd like to see it to go to traffic safety. I'd like to see them figure out what can be done there, if it can be done without the reference to securing property and easements. And if it can't be, then at least have a discussion with the property owner so we know where they are.
I agree with everything you said. I think if it gets beyond that point, that we still, you just buckle down and do what's right for the town, but I agree, all those steps you said are the right thing to do. Traffic safety, trying to avoid takings, if you need to take some land, talk to the property owner, try to do it voluntarily. But if you get to that point and there's still no solution and you need a taking, I wouldn't hesitate to recommend that the town take the land for a serious traffic safety purpose. If Traffic Safety Committee says it's not that bad, don't worry about it, then that's fine.
All I'm saying is that the warrant closes on January 2nd? 7th. So there's like 2 weeks to do all the things that I've listed. So I'm
But that doesn't,
basically suggesting that while we might be able to get this article on for this town meeting, this may be an article that we should be looking forward to for next town meeting.
Or we could put it on and then do the usual thing, which is go through the drill of having people review it, and if it doesn't have momentum, then you pass it over.
although the warrant closes, that's basically saying that you're not going to have any new things added for consideration in the warrant. But in the past, we've always had plenty of placeholders that weren't, that were still being fleshed out conceptually.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's not ideal, but if it needs to happen. I mean, this is, for me, that was an issue that came up 2 weeks ago, and I'm kind of surprised that nobody's pushed it before, but maybe, you've got traffic safety's perspective?
Yeah, Susan Darrell, Traffic Safety now. Yes, we discussed it last week at our meeting very quickly as far as what happened with the study and the road closure, but it will be discussed at our next meeting because it is quite apparent with all the complaints and the sight lines, and that is on our agenda for our next upcoming meeting, the third Wednesday of the month. And it's clearly, it's engineering that needs to be done because of taking it off this far too much landing and the grading and all this.
Okay.
Third Wednesday of the month.
Okay.
No, just a kind of a partial response to what you said. I think one of the lessons I got out of the Sanger Street feedback was that we should not pull triggers on ideas until there's better communication with people who are the stakeholders. And that's what I was trying to say with the Pine Hill project, and that's what I'm trying to say here, particularly when it comes to street geometry. It seems like so many people have opinions about those issues.
You noticed.
It's like everybody is an instant engineer and traffic safety expert. But the bigger point is, I'm hesitant about populating the warrant with all kinds of provocative ideas, and then at the next meeting having an overflow crowd saying, we've heard this, we've rumors, what are you doing? Is this a coup d'etat? Is this the end of democracy? I mean, all that kind of stuff. It's better that we proceed a little more organized and a little more systematic, and that was the whole point of the NOI process.
And I guess I would say we're the leaders of the town, and if we have ideas we think are good, we should sell them, and I'm not sure the sale on Sanger Street was as good as maybe we thought it was at first, but if people have disagreement with it, that's fair, that's part of the process. I'm not afraid to have people come in and criticize an idea, Paul.
I think they should.
Yeah, but
It's
I
healthy.
also don't think we should avoid, there's such a thing as being too careful and never getting anything done. And I'm more concerned with that at this point in the way, the issues we're dealing with than I am with letting things putter along the way they have been because we're afraid to try anything new. This is a minor point roughly because it's just a traffic safety item. And I would think that people, it's a personal safety issue. If people don't believe it's the right solution, they should feel free to speak up. But we had a lot of people last week, if you want to talk about the public speaking, public came out here and told us that intersection is bad and something needs to be done about it. So I'm really comfortable.
All I'm saying is we have a traffic safety committee. Let's hear from them.
That's
If
what
they
Susan
want
said.
this,
Right.
then let's listen to them. If they don't want this, let's listen to them.
That's great.
Yeah, for me,
Let's find out
for me,
if
this
this,
is, I'm sorry.
find out if there's a property owner who's going to be cooperative or not cooperative.
Don't care about that. I mean, it would be great if they would cooperate, but if it's a bad enough problem, I don't care. It's the public interest. That's just me, but
I care
For
about
me,
it.
this is a little bit like the roads where I'd love to see us get some consensus on what are the most important intersections in town and
That's what traffic
in
safety
what
does.
order, and then let's figure out how we're just going to
Right.
go through and maybe we bang out one a year and we take care of some of these problems.
And that's why I fully support the idea of getting traffic safety's input on this.
So do I.
I think it's a great idea.
yeah. And Mark, to expand on that a little bit, I think, and Sean's been on that committee, but they do have a ranking of problem intersections, but there's also, I think, an understanding of which ones are feasible to solve and which ones maybe are infeasible or a lot harder and a lot more expensive to solve, and that probably should play into it as well.
Yeah, and we ought to take a look at that and maybe have some discussion and see if we can find some consensus amongst ourselves about it.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of other intersections being mentioned, and if they had, if we were able to give almost 100 grand to traffic safety, and we asked them, where would you spend that 100 grand? It may not be at Solomon and Washington. It may be at Lake Street, and there's a lot of intersections in town. So anyway,
I don't disagree with that, Paul. I mean, I think the squeaky wheel gets the grease. This is on here for discussion. If you think a better way to do it is to say we should appropriate a traffic safety article and not specify a particular street and ask traffic safety to tell us what intersections they would use in what priority order, I'd be supportive of that.
well, right now, I'm suggesting we take this article and send it to traffic safety and see if we can get a reaction from them. And
Well, they're not going to meet till the third Wednesday of January, so by that point, we won't be adding things to the warrant. So if you want to take this off the warrant, then it's up for next year for a special. If you want to have an article that we can work with on traffic safety in this year's town meeting warrant, then we should leave something on the warrant, or at least leave something in the discussion so that the next meeting, if we close the warrant, we at least have something on it.
What's the date that you need it by, that you would need traffic safety meet by?
David, what's the date?
For the next meeting?
It's January 7th.
January what?
January 7th.
Oh, the warrant closes the 7th, yeah.
Yeah.
I think this plays into exactly why we're doing this process. We're going to see this a couple more times on the next few. He's throwing it out there. It may totally change, but it's a placeholder right now.
Right. That's the idea.
We should keep it there. Maybe it'll be Lake and Elliott by the time we get to town meeting, who knows, but
Maybe it'd be Lake and Farm.
it
That's
was
another
worth,
terrible
it's
intersection.
worth throwing out there, so we're having the discussion. People at town, I'm sure there's like 50 people at home watching this right now.
Yeah.
They might show up at the next meeting and say, you lost your mind. Finish Woodland and Gould.
That would be premature, but
No,
yeah.
Right, but it should be there. The point of putting these in is to start that discussion. There's a
That's
whole
right.
lot of meetings that'll take place.
That's right. Okay. So the next one is 6F.
6E is no longer on.
Yeah, what happened to 6? Oh, 6E, it's stuck to the other page. There you go. 6E. Chuck, thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah, I learned my alphabet early on.
6E would be a capital item. It'd be information technology and information security improvements. Basically, it would be to upgrade the town capabilities. Some of these things we've done without for a long time, so I included them here. At a minimum, I'd like to get the phone systems all on the same type of system and improved between town hall, fire, police, and the library. And we've gotten a quote for that, so that is $38,000. So the line that says cost of just upgrading existing phone systems and communications is $40,000. We already have an actual quote for that work.
And how much is it?
It came to $38,000. And I think that that's very important to do, and we would locate the central nervous system of this phone system over at the police department. The other items in here are consulting, $25,000 to do an RFP for IT consulting assistance and project management with the intent to bring back some sort of IT management plan to be implemented over the next 5 years. Or we can pick off some of the items that are in the capital plan and just allocate one large lump sum of $250,000 I put in here. But the two items I think could actually go would be the $25,000 for the IT consulting and project management, and then the $40,000 for the phone system.
The way I read that was that you wanted $25,000 to do an RFP. And I'm thinking, I mean, in my life, I've written a lot of RFPs, and even at my inflated legal rate, I've never charged anybody $25,000 to write an RFP.
I think you read that way too literally.
So I suggest you reword this to say that you want to do an RFP for IT consulting assistance with a budget of $25,000 to be spent on the consultant.
However you want it.
If it's below $25,000, I think they raised the number. You don't have to do an RFP at all. So I think you're below.
Yeah, but it's I mean, it's still a good business practice.
Or get quotes,
So,
however you want to do it.
Because when I read this, I was thinking, you're going to spend so much money on just doing paperwork in order to get a consultant. Just pick up the phone.
But the phone doesn't.
It's definitely
ring,
not.
that's the whole
Pick up the Campbell soup can.
So I
Your
think,
point, Paul, is basically $25,000 to enter into a contract for these consulting services.
which is definitely what he meant.
Yeah.
And I would just say we've got there's a liability risk associated with this too, which is that we've got, data security requirements, which my understanding is it's very difficult, if not impossible, for us to meet with our present way of doing things.
We've been budgeting about the same amount for technology each year, and piecing things together, keeping things going. But this year there was an event that happened that affected the police department's whole server that cost us several $1,000s to upgrade, and that's something that wasn't intended. But I think those things are going to be more frequent. And the assessor's system had failed too, unpredicted, and so that was $4,000 or $5,000.
So this seems like a no-brainer, the $25,000 and the $40,000. But what about the $250,000?
Well, that includes, we were looking at the accounting, replacing the accounting system with something that's more robust that users can access, and would have purchase order system in it, and there would be an approval process for purchase orders before any money could be allocated.
But perhaps for the next iteration, in our next meeting, we'd want to look at specific dollars for specific things like accounting software, rather than sort of amorphous $250,000 to
The problem with that is he needs the consultant to fine tune some of them. I mean, he knows what the phone system will cost, but there's some other.
Well, we have prices on the consultant. We estimated 25. The phone system would be 40. We had 75. I think Irene, like 75,000 for 50,000 for the accounting system.
With the accounting system, it's something I've been discussing with the region, that they may be willing to switch to the same accounting system, so there would be economies of scale.
Okay. The fiber ring is probably the most expensive thing on here that takes care of a lot of communication issues. If you have a fiber ring going around the town, and your communications can jump on that instead of relying on these microwave hookups. But that's probably $75,000 to $100,000 project.
And to Sean's point, though, maybe I'm misunderstanding I thought that's what we're asking the consultant identify
Well, what I would,
providing consulting assistance to help design a plan and identify what we need to do.
right, right.
That is my point. I
I would
don't,
almost split this into two. One, I mean, if you know what you need to do on the phones, that's a project, and then this other one is a different project, because that's much more
Right.
of a strategic look at what we need.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
does it need to be
makes
split
sense.
into two now, or does the placeholder work
No, let's
such that we can split it later?
Split it
What?
now.
Yeah, split it now.
Put the 40,000 on the capital list and
Yeah, that's a
have
good
the
idea.
25,000.
That's a great idea.
Yep. Good.
Amen.
So the
Then
25
why isn't
would
it
be a
3?
Separate
What's the
article,
third?
right?
Because we're not going to do the 250,000.
Oh, the fiber ring thing?
Well, you might do a portion of the 250, though. You don't know.
I think you get the study, and then next year.
Then next year you go back to
You get a whole
capital.
list of things that they're going to want to do that'll be integrated. It would be nice to see some savings, too, if possible.
Yeah. The phone system, I mean, we're still going to look at the numbers on that. We think that there's definitely going to be some savings compared to all these copper Centrex lines that we pay for every month. And really don't get any added communication features out of them. I think there will be some savings. I just don't know how much it is yet. I don't think it's going to be huge, but.
All right, so you'll bring this back with two articles?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, I got
Chuck,
one more
advise on what
comment.
letters to use for this.
Inside that 25, I mean, since we don't have specific IT, as you would see in the outside world,
Right.
there's so many balls at play that we don't actually see. The fire department has their own IT issues that are, we've been the recipient of thousands of dollars of free consulting from an internal guy on the fire department. The police department has, there's a huge infrastructure over there that tends to keep getting hit by lightning and costs us a fortune. And there's no link between, and then the school that's supposed to have a hard link, which does, but it's patchwork, I think, right now, from what I understand. They're looking at upgrading their system that's archaic and half the rooms don't work. They have a clock system that they're upgrading, and so there's nothing pulling this all together. I had suggested at a Pine Hill meeting at one point, if they're talking phone system, that we should try to marry the two as one big project, but, you quickly find out that might just kill both of them. I don't know. It seems like if you're going to hire a consultant, the consultant should be looking at police, fire, everything town hall related, school, because that's our biggest phone system up there. And we don't even talking about it.
Yeah,
So
we
it's,
should have-
and you look at it and you say, well, it's in the school budget. Well, it is, but it's coming out of the same tax bill
We should have them all communicating with each other.
via this consultant.
Yeah.
So David, you put that in the article for next time?
Yeah, I can't say that the phone systems won't communicate with each other right now. But
Well, they always will.
I
You
think
can always
Sean's
pick a
saying
phone
to
up and dial.
take into account needs of all the different functions, not just the few that,
right,
the core ones you were focused on, but actually
Right.
expand.
And I don't just mean it in phones, that was an example,
Right.
but IT related. You have a server over here and a server over there and a server over there, and this guy did something and you should have talked to me, and
well, where this started from was I was just going to do town hall, and then use the system at town hall that could be upgraded, and then add the pieces on later, like do police department later, and then bring on fire later, and then once we saw the whole cost, that's why we're bringing it forward now instead of just implementing here. But the system is expandable enough to include the schools.
Well,
we
can
just
you come
need to
back
get
with
theirs.
with two articles, one for the capital and one for the study?
Yep.
I think that's what people are saying they want.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Frank, you had some input on this.
Well, that one piece that we asked for capital allows us to put many more devices online, but also it allows us to connect into a phone system. Or if we were to upgrade our phone system, that $25,000 front-end piece would accommodate these new type of internet phone systems.
Right.
So I don't know if the person wants to look at the schools too. I don't know if it's possible to put them together or not, but I know you spoke before, someone from your office that
Yeah, I
might want
think.
to look at.
Yeah, I think they have like a common interchange to go with others, but we'll send the consultant who did this quote over to the school and check.
David, you might, if there's a consultant who's actually worked in other municipalities, I hope you're talking to somebody like that, they might understand what the scope of a study should be, because they might have done it in other places. Not, not that we're looking to feather their nest, but
Right.
they just may know what's the efficient, correct way to do it, and,
Right.
and what's worthwhile to do and what isn't.
Right.
I don't know if you've talked to them about that, but that might be worth the discussion.
Yeah, and like I said, we had started just small up until we met with them yesterday, or was it last week? I don't know. We just got to this quote for the 38,000,
Yeah.
and then so we can have him talk to the schools and see what it would cost to integrate it with the existing school system or roll them into one big system.
Okay. All right, so you're going to come back with two separate articles. What's the next one? The next one is, I'm just trying to keep us moving along. General Chemical, this is the consulting.
I think we're pretty clear on that. We kind of discussed it, and we're all in agreement.
Yeah, do we want to just vote now to, the way we did with the other one, to put it on
put it
the
on the warrant, yeah.
warrant?
Right, Mark? And
Well,
Chuck?
so this is, I mean, we're funding this contract that we're working on now, right?
Your existing contract is funded in the current year.
So this would be ongoing after that.
Right, right.
Yeah, I think David diverted funds from other consulting budgets or something to use, to pay up through the end of this year, because we didn't do the transfer.
Right, right.
But this would let that work continue, and also, I think someone had, maybe more than one person talked about how it wouldn't necessarily just be general chemical, but there might be other issues that arose.
There, the last 3 years I've been here, each year there's something that comes forward that you need that professional assistance from, whether it's an LSP or a hydrologist.
You don't have
or-
to spend it, but if we have it, then we know we'll need it.
Right, I mean, that we would write it up, it would have to be with a vote of the Board of Selectmen for whatever purpose.
Okay. All right, so do we want to support putting an article like this on?
A motion.
Second, all in favor? All right, good.
This is the article requested 20,
Yeah,
but I heard 25.
I only heard 20.
I think 20, this one's 20.
Yeah.
I think 25 was the last article, this was 20, I believe.
This one, I mean, we had it as 20, 10,000 for ongoing general chemical and 10,000 for other. I just,
I was just trying, I know what it said in the thing here, just wondering what the motion was.
I think it was, did you say 25? I think it was 20. Did you intend to say 25, or?
I think I said 25 because someone mentioned 25.
Okay. Well, let's
So I
not do,
didn't know
let's
what
not do
that
the
was.
whole recall thing, can we just, the whole revote thing, can we just assume it was 20, Paul, are you okay
I heard
with
you
that?
say 20,
20?
yeah.
I mean, this is,
But I heard 20 as well.
okay,
So
Okay,
that's what it was.
all right, good. David, you want to, I don't know if you want to bring up 6G, you're recommending it be held over, so.
yeah, let's just hold that, because there's so many moving parts on that.
All right, the next one is Sean, so we'll wait till he comes back on that one.
Mr. Chairman, your agenda is not fully detailed. You're talking about numbers and letters, and we don't know what they are.
There was a
Oh,
supplemental
okay, so
packet, there was a supplemental packet of.
Yeah, Peter, I think it'll become clear as we talk about 6G, the item that David said we're going to defer off was an idea that I think he had concerning how to administer space utilization at Town Hall, and his suggestion is to put that off till next year. And Sean will discuss 6H when Paul gets back here.
And those numbers are agenda item 6, and then they're just all under there, so,
Right, and I'm saying we're kind of blind as to what they are.
right, yeah.
6I, well, we should wait for Paul, because that's kind of his. Do we want to just take a 2-minute break?
Yeah,
Let's take a 2-minute break.
Sorry, somebody's got to
You don't
leave.
have any problem with these folks seeing this, do you? Make copies and hand them to folks.
No, I
in-
know, but
Oh.
would it ordinarily should have been,
No, when you guys get the, we
Ron,
did your...
we're good, we're good.
We
Ron.
did your initial packet last Friday.
right?
And then I was still working on the NOIs. I sent that out to you yesterday afternoon.
Right.
And I wouldn't normally ever post anything that would generate questions to you that you haven't had a chance to review in an open meeting yet. So that's why I wouldn't
It's all
be
public
posting it
document,
as-
people handed it out, I mean, that's,
Right,
that's fine.
right. I mean, everything here is a public document now that it's been released and
We're seeing, just like the other thing we talked about, the opinion, we're seeing these for the first time.
right.
I think we got them yesterday afternoon or something, when did we get them?
The opinion,
No, these, Monday?
Yesterday.
Yesterday, yeah.
these you've seen yesterday at the end of the day.
Right.
And then the legal opinion was today.
We covered that already.
Yeah.
Peter?
Again, I'd like to clarify Mark. I made a comment to Mark. It wasn't a complaint. It was an observation that the public had no advance notice that these items would be discussed because this was not part of the posted meeting. So everything under 6, you had to kind of know it was going to happen and to be here and because you are deliberating these items. And that was my point to him. And apparently it's a practice, not an oversight. That's what bothers me.
Well, they're trying
It's a
to,
practice, not an oversight, what do you mean by that?
Well, David said it didn't exist to be posted in advance. All these 6s didn't exist to be posted in advance.
So if the chair has a prerogative under the open meeting law for items not known to him 48 hours before a meeting, and he's exercised his prerogative to have...
Yeah, I mean, I think our agenda said we were going to
Yeah, no,
discuss
it does say
articles
consideration of
for-
articles to be initiated by BOS, I think is a request.
That's all it said, yeah.
Yeah.
It didn't tell us what you'd be deliberating. My point is only that we didn't know what you'd be deliberating.
Well, you didn't come to our last meeting, Peter, so you missed it when we talked about how we were going to have everybody send David their individual thoughts on what articles they might want to see on town meeting, and then David was going to pull them together and give them to us at this meeting. So that's pretty much what's happened.
You're not serious, right?
No, I mean, that's what happened. That's what happened. So this is not something we ever planned with specificity. I'm seeing some of these for the first time. I'm sure Sean and Mark and everyone is at the same time you're seeing them. We're not making any decisions tonight, other than with respect to 2 things that we've talked a lot about in the past also. So we're not going to make any decisions tonight. It's just that it's airing ideas that various selectmen or David had for things that we might want to put on the warrant.
Thank you for the clarification.
No, it's okay. It's a fair question. It's a fair comment.
Not a complaint. There's a
That's okay.
difference.
It's a fair comment. We could have done better to get the word out and would have if we'd had more word to get out. Sean?
Which leads to mine, because this was just generated. I'm happy to see 2 members and a former member of the Board of Health here. We've talked a lot. I've sat through a lot of meetings. You guys spend lots of time doing the duties of the Board of Health. Read it.
I just want to say that I had given them a heads up so that we wouldn't have
Right.
okay. I didn't know if I told you that.
Right.
Okay.
But to our previous discussion, we're not, it sounds like we're deliberating, and we somewhat are, but this certainly isn't the last draft of any of these, and it's not the last time we're going to discuss them. This was to put them out there.
Oh, we're definitely deliberating. We're not deciding, but we're
Right.
deliberating.
Right. But it's not the final time.
Anyway, why don't we talk substantively about
All right,
what
well,
you think?
would you like me to read it? The article would attempt to increase the Board of Health members from 3 to 5. It also would change the members from elected to appointed, or we would make those 2 additional seats appointed at this point. And then, as a second part of this, eliminate the contracted agent position and replace with a Board of Health Director sanitarian. That's something that I know has been discussed over the past year at least. David and I have talked about this quite a few times. I think moving from 3 to 5, we're proof to how well that can work, how well it spreads the load off of any individual members.
Well, a couple of the pieces were brought to us by residents who said that they would do a citizen petition.
Right.
And I think that they didn't do that knowing that it was going to be incorporated into something. So if there is a piece that the Board of Selectmen may not want to move forward, you still may be seeing it again coming back in another.
Well, here are my concerns. Every time we try to make a change in governmental structure, we have had consultants, we've had it looked at, we had the Collins Center, we had Department of Revenue do studies, we've done all of this, and we haven't had that here particularly with regard to the Board of Health. We don't have a government study committee coming forward and saying that they've looked at the Board of Health and they think it ought to be done. So I'm a little concerned that the predicate for all of this hasn't taken place. And as far as making a board appointed, the Board of Health has a lot of functions in this town, and having them elected has actually worked in the past. I mean, when there's been dissatisfaction with the Board of Health, there's been elections, and there has been change and turnover on the Board of Health. That's the advantage of having elected positions. They're directly responsible to the voters and to the property owners who come before them. And I'm also mindful of the fact that because I do work for a number of towns, it's actually quite wonderful that we have 2 MDs on the Board of Health, and we have a expert in water on the Board of Health. There are some boards of health that have people who have much less qualification and much less background. So to some extent, we're quite lucky. And as far as eliminating the contracted agent position and replace with a BOH director and sanitarian, I think we had the town administrator look at that, and there was a way to do that that was going to be cost effective. And I think you presented some ideas along that line, and you also presented it to the Board of Health. This was last year.
A year ago.
Yeah, a year ago. And
That's what we were talking about.
That was inspectional
That was a unique
service.
situation.
That was just the health, the inspectional service, the building commissioner serving as the health agent to the Board of Health. I think that's what we had talked about.
yeah, well, he was also a sanitarian in another community.
Right,
So
but
he combined all those features together.
Right.
So to some extent, we've talked about that, or something like that, and that's a good conversation to have, and I think it always should be discussed. But I've seen from reading the Board of Health minutes that they have this item in their minutes about reorganization of structure or operations that they, I don't know what their current minutes say, but the ones that are on file are through like August and maybe September. The minutes that I've looked at, they have that as an agenda item, so it looks like they're working on something. And I don't see them bringing something forward on this article. So I'm a little wary with the message that it sends for this board to try and present something regarding another board without the sort of collaborative process with that board, absent independent experts who have come in and said, this is what you should do. So I feel like if the Board of Health can't resolve the stuff itself, then maybe we should bring back the Collins Center or some other consultant, have them look at what's going on in the town, have them formulate a recommendation from outside the town, so that it's clear that it's free of politics, it's free of all things that go on in a small town, and it's based on good management and practices throughout the state and all that kind of stuff. So it seems to me this is a little premature.
Well, while it might be premature, the town shouldn't necessarily wait around. If we didn't put a placeholder in here, it's not going to happen. Because you're right, the Board of Health's not bringing anything. I'm hoping that they'll sign up for this. It's not going to happen tonight, I'm sure. But we need a notice of intent to make a placeholder. So, is this exactly what the town meeting's going to say? I don't know. But if the Board of Health doesn't bring anything forward, the citizens will. I'm sure of it. So I brought something. I'd love to have some friendly amendments over the next month to the structure of this. But yes, the Board of Health has had that on the agenda, I think, for the past year, every month, every meeting, for all I know. I don't know whether they've ever talked about it. I know they have meetings past midnight.
Yeah, I've been reading the minutes.
We
There's
have
discussion.
talked about it in this meeting.
I do read their minutes, and it's every set of minutes is, I don't know if everyone, but there's a category of discussion of this reorganization. So I don't know where they are in it, but it just seems better management to try to work collaboratively with them and meet with them as a board and try and figure out.
I'd like to do that.
Well, I mean, these aren't really that complicated. They've just been kicked around here and there. I think it was Peter, one time we had briefly talked about would expanding from 3 to 5 be a good idea or not, but it was just, I don't know if you and I had talked about it, Daryl, or not, but in the personnel board, we had talked, there was some discussion about the director position or the Board of Health administrator position, and I didn't want them to take any action at removing one of those until there was more deliberation done on the structure.
And the current plan is that the board has with advisory is that we're going to be meeting with them to talk about what we've been evaluating about the structure of the board and the budget and staffing and how that all fits together.
Right.
So that's on the agenda, and also advisory has formed a subcommittee to look at that with us. So
Is that something you'd like to share with us too, Daryl?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we would love to hear that too. Do you think any of those potential solutions would require a vote at town meeting?
No, I don't believe so. I think it would either be worked through with adjusting hours, and you can ask the other board member who's here separately what their opinion is, since I haven't discussed this specific topic with the whole board in a meeting, since I just learned about it today, this afternoon.
Well, the reason I ask is if you thought there would, then we, could leave a placeholder.
No, and I don't think
modify it.
advisory or the personnel board views it that way. They've seen, we've had to create some different positions recently, food inspector, and do some other adjustments with supplemental agent, and that seems to go okay with what he helped with both the personnel board and also the town administrator. So I don't know that it would have to be something that would go before.
Mark, what changes are you referring to specifically when you say changes? Do you mean within, 3 to 5 board members, or do you mean?
Well, this would require town meeting to vote on something, but.
Oh, I thought you meant staff, sorry.
Yeah,
Well, but there's something that, if you're working on some set of solutions, and you would need town meeting to help you implement those, and we would leave something in here with a BOH label on it and modify it as we go along, but I'm not hearing that you think that's going to be necessary.
I'd just like to clarify, David, representing my participation in the idea of going from 3 to 5. I believe that can be tracked to exclusively a comment I made at the advisory hearing last year when the selectmen were being discussed as going to 3 to 5. I rose in support of it, and as a ending comment said, I'd love it if the Board of Health were 5 members rather than 3. And I still am of that opinion. How that's accomplished never got beyond that statement, and that's simply my statement, but apparently it resonated and resounded and echoed to the point that David thought that I had actually studied it and brought it forward.
No, that is exactly what I remembered. That's why I took the note of it.
That's where it was. So.
Okay, so are we done with this one?
Yeah, I just suggest we go on to the next one. I've heard the ideas, let it sit out there for a bit.
So David will bring it back in 2 weeks or whatever, when we have our more formal discussion.
Well,
of things.
I'd like to hear from the Board of Health more officially. I'd like them to have their meeting with advisory. I'd like to understand.
All right, so your idea is we would keep it in the mix, but we're not really sure what form it would take at this point or anything?
Or not sure of anything.
And you mentioned Collins as a possible resource for looking at this. Is that something that we could talk about too, in terms of having other input?
I think we should go back and look at the Collins report to see if anything was addressed already, and then use that as input, and then,
Yeah, the Collins,
I think they did.
I served on the Governance Task Force Committee for several years, and the Collins, so I know the Collins report well. It opined generally that the town had too many elected positions, not enough appointed positions. I don't recall specifically if they mentioned the Board of Health. I have no problem with this being on as a placeholder. I've always thought that a broader board representation, I share the same view as Peter. 5 elected officials is a broader representation, and in my opinion, particularly if you get the right people, will work better. I don't support the idea of changing it from elected to appointed, but have no problem discussing it. I think that's a broad topic, but it's probably not in final enough format, but I don't, to vote on whether or not we're going to support it. So I think it needs some additional work, and love to hear the Board of Health's input on the ideas.
One thing I'll note in doing the research about structures of boards of health in other towns that are somehow comparable to Sherborn, although it's hard to find a lot that are quite as small as Sherborn. I would say I didn't recall seeing 5-member boards of health in towns that were even larger than Sherborn. You know, it took a certain size to hit that. Spreading the workload might not be a bad idea. I question whether we get enough people given the announcements that keep going out about all the open positions in town, and then having to deal with it if people don't step forward. So I'd be curious about that. And I would say over the years, for various meetings I've attended, both I was on the Board of Health and then also just other things to other work I've been involved in. I couldn't tell you the specifics because when I heard people talking about it, I thought, well, that doesn't really apply to us. When people were talking about the pros and cons of appointed and elected boards of health specifically. And this was coming from both staff with boards of health and with the members of boards of health, and then with other people in towns who worked with boards of health. And I don't recall, though, hearing positive things about appointed boards. I recall, so this is kind of anecdotal, but that was always my impression, is that there were just various problems, pressures, skewing of the regulatory and technical functions of the board, and part of the reason I didn't pay attention to some of the details is I thought, well, that doesn't really pertain to our situation.
So I would follow up on something Paul said, and maybe what Darrell just said too, which is we're not good in this town at turning over appointed boards. Like I think similar to what Paul said, the electoral process is a way to have the citizens change people and change policies indirectly change policies on the Board of Health if they're concerned enough to vote somebody out and vote somebody else in. I haven't seen us doing that with appointed boards. This board, or historically the Board of Selectmen, it's been a rare event when a board changes over much at all, unless people voluntarily choose to leave. So that would be one concern. The other point I would make about this item, which I think is I think it's really important to look at the Board of Health. I think we've spent when I think of things that this board has heard about and thought about when over the past couple of years, a lot of it's involved the Board of Health. Some of it has been concern about the Board of Health. Some of it has been things that the Board of Health has done to get involved in things that are helpful to the town and further some policies that the selectmen have been interested in. I guess I would say I don't necessarily know that the structure is the issue. The issues I hear about, and I'm not saying that I buy it or I don't buy it, but that there's concerns about the Board of Health being responsive, both procedurally responsive and substantively responsive. And I know I've seen a fair number of emails on that topic, both emails from people complaining and emails from Darrell explaining what's really going on from the Board of Health's standpoint. And so if there was any policy aspect of an article concerning the Board of Health that I would want to see addressed, it would be a way to ensure there was some type of performance standards and accountability and clarity about what people should and shouldn't expect, and are entitled and not entitled to expect from the Board of Health in reviewing their applications. And then there's always the substantive question. That's a completely different question. That is a policy question. That's where you get to the elected part of the process. I'm very admiring of Darrell for the work she's been doing on any number of environmental issues that have come up in the town, and I presume the other members too. But I also know that there are concerns that the Board of Health can be seen as an obstacle sometime, and we should try to figure out how to make that something that people understand when that's appropriate, when it's not appropriate.
I'll start with something positive, and that would be the Board of Health has been interested in working with the selectmen and other groups in town more, and have made attempts over the last number of years. And I'd say that recently on both certain projects in town, and also on general chemical, that's starting to happen. So I think that's a good step in the right direction. Some of the other things that you mentioned, it does disturb me that the opinion of the Board of Health has been seriously tarnished by a rather narrow group, I believe, who's very bold. And so we've seen a change in how people even walk in to Board of Health meetings and how they view what we're doing. And yet, really, our procedures haven't changed in the sense that we try to be consistent, fair, apply the regulations clearly, help people understand the what-ifs with their project. If you do this, then this will be required, but where is your flexibility? What other options have you considered? What will that mean? So that's just standard procedure. Also, in terms of what folks can expect, a lot of things are pretty well laid out, and really, by the time somebody submits an application, it's extraordinarily rare for us to go beyond public hearing. And then we have a certain time limit too. So it's not as if things drag out. Once people have submitted a complete application, they have 45 days. So that hasn't changed, and really you can look at the records in terms of date something was submitted and date of decision. And it's not as if people are being dragged through a convoluted process to get to that. Now, that said, the subject matter is technically complex, and that can just be difficult, especially when square pegs are trying to go into round holes and trying to figure out exactly how it works. And most of the regulations that we enforce, 95%-ish, I haven't calculated out, are state-level regulations, and that's what we're dealing with. Except in the area of wells, because the state doesn't have regulations for private wells. But our well regulations are based on state model regulations. So it's not, we're not so discretionary, we're following and applying regulations, most of which are state regulations. So.
Can I add something? I work as a town council for communities, and I've been through discussions with towns about appointed and elected boards of health in particular. And those generally come out of the situation where there's a lack of qualifications of members of the Board of Health and lack of professional backgrounds. And so the thought usually is if you have an appointed process, you can go through a vetting process and try and get very highly qualified people to serve. Here in Sherborn, just to repeat what I said before, we have 2 doctors on a Board of Health, and we have an expert in water and all the things that you yourself do. A totally remarkable makeup in terms of qualification. So if you went to an appointed board, it's hard for me to imagine getting people with better backgrounds than what we already have. So I don't see that as a compelling reason. The other part is that I do read all the minutes that the different boards put in our reading file, and I read yours, and most of the time you're granting variances. This pages and pages of granting variances, and I've seen very little of people being turned away. And so some of the complaints that I've heard, I can't deal with issues that I can't find in the minutes at all. That someone is going to do a 40B because the Board of Health didn't give them the number of houses and septic systems in a lot. But having read all the minutes, I don't see that the Board of Health ever voted that, and so I'm thinking, well, maybe they read it in the regulations or they talked to somebody, but it's not documented. So a lot of these complaints are not, I can't verify them from the documentation that comes to the Board of Selectmen. And as I say, I do read all your minutes. So part of this is educating all of us about what a Board of Health does. There are just so many people in town who don't know what a Board of Health does. Educating them about what a Board of Health does, what is doable and what's not doable, and why not. So if you can't allow a house on a particular parcel, is that arbitrary? Is that just because you had a bad day, or is there a reason for it? And does the community understand that there's a health reason behind it? That at the end of the day, you're trying to keep people free from disease, you're free from unhealthy situations that comes from having a septic system and a well and all lots with wetlands and everything else. There is an important health issue here. But this seems like a sort of a nuclear option to a problem that needs to go through a series, I think, of steps where you look at different parts of things. And I guess I've been saying this all night with regard to other articles, that I know we're throwing out ideas here, but there needs to be collaboration with the different boards. There needs to be a wider range discussion.
So I'll go back to something you said earlier, Paul, tonight when we were giving out licenses, in which you talked about these are citizens of the town, even though they haven't really checked off all the boxes yet. We ought to grant them their licenses. We shouldn't put them at fear of losing their license or to too much trouble. We ought to give them a long time period to bring themselves into compliance. And I think one of the complaints I hear about the Board of Health from people who complain about the Board of Health is they don't feel like they get that kind of reception from a regulatory board of the town, and they're looking for more of a can-do sense. And I don't know that anything in this article directly addresses that, but I do think it's a good...
How does this fix that?
Well, I don't know that it does, but I do think it's important that the Board of Health is having this discussion, that we're having the discussion, and that there's some, I guess, rigor and analysis brought to bear on all the various complaints, because we have heard complaints, and I do read your responses when people complain, Darrell, at least when I'm copied on them, and everything you say makes sense, but I also know that the complaints are heartfelt by the people who are bringing, so the communication somehow isn't getting through, and it's not just, I mean, it may be a narrow group of people. I don't think it's just particular people who have been high profile on this issue. I think there are other, and this is not new to your composition on the board. This has been going on in the 20 years I've lived in town. There have been cycles, and the Board of Health has been, a concern or a subject of criticism periodically just in those years. I think it's because of, you deal with very important things that are very expensive and very close to people's, families, and you have big implications for people. So,
I got to respond to a couple
yeah,
things.
go ahead, Sean.
Having trouble figuring out where to start, but this is to start a conversation that nothing in here says anything about who's on the board right now. We can't design a Board of Health around, Darrell Beardsley and Dr. Quinn and Dr. Honeywell. We're lucky to have them. But they could just assume not run next year, and we'll have, a landscaper and a couple carpenters on there. I mean, that's not what we're doing here. This is government. It's not about the people. It's about the positions. And I'm proposing that 5 is better than 3. Just for that exact reason. We're lucky to have them, but that doesn't mean we're always going to have them. And to your point, you get a better vetting perspective sometimes if you're going to appoint them, especially when there's going to be 2 open seats to fill. The general public does not go to Board of Health meetings. They don't read the minutes that you read. They have no clue what the Board of Health does, but they vote on the Board of Health members. They have no idea what's going on in the background. They've never sat through a meeting. They don't know what a variance is. They have no idea how many variance meetings there are. It's incredible how many variances. So to your point, you read the minutes, there's a lot of variances, aren't there? Somebody paid for those variances in time, money, and possibly moving out of town, and another buyer trying to move into town. That variance held up the sale of a house. It held up a septic system. It cost a lot of money. Believe me, it cost a lot of money. So to say, seems like you approved a lot of variances. You did. That might be part of the problem. Can't sit here and say we know one side or the other. I'm putting it out there that the general public has a perception. I have a perception. They know I've lived through it. I'm not saying that this is the definite answer, but something should be done. Something needs to change. This Board of Health sits through meetings till midnight. And it's, from what I understand, I'm being told it's not 45 days right now for hearings. It's out beyond 2 months. So
what about hiring a consultant? How about spending
we
some...
did. We approved that a couple months ago. I'm hoping we can get into that before we get to town meeting.
A consultant for the Board of Health?
For regulatory committees.
You approved, doing a process to get someone, But there isn't any funding for it, but I have to do the process.
Well, did you want to?
I thought we approved funding for it. I thought we did approve funding for it.
I'll have to go back, but we've had a number of other consultants that...
Right.
Funded.
Yeah, I'm not sure we approved funding for that one, Sean, but we could have an article that addresses that.
Yeah, because what I'm, in response to what you're saying is if a third party who's an expert on this whole area of both law and science, if he comes in here and says, what you got here can be improved in the following ways, and lays out a bunch of steps, that would have a lot of credibility with me.
Right. And I don't want you to do it because I said so. I would challenge the Board of Health. I opened the door. It would blow my mind if they come back and say, we're all set, we don't need to make any changes. We're happy with the way things are running right now. I think General Chemical, I think the fields, I think everything that's happened in the past 2 years would show that there's improvements to be made.
Can I ask what,
And I put out a notice of intent to help further that discussion. If there isn't one, then it's not going to hit town meeting, and no changes happen. I think we have between now and then to discuss it. They can discuss it.
I would say as it's currently structured, I don't get the same feel of just moving towards evaluating.
That doesn't have to be how this is structured.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm saying. It's just, it was a placeholder. We had to put something on here. I strongly believe we should go to 5 members.
And typically in the past, placeholders have been broader than what the supporters and the applicants know is going to get narrowed down to. That's been my experience anyway. The
Yes.
initial NOI is much broader than what finally gets submitted to town meeting.
you mentioned that you're going to advisory, but was that for your budget review, or is that for something?
It's
Oh.
budget, but
You're going to the whole advisory, or did they set up something special to review Board of Health? Because
There's a subcommittee, right?
yes.
so they set up a subcommittee, and they're having meetings and having you guys come into
They've
the...
had an attendee at our meeting.
Oh, whoops.
So we should move through this. So it sounds like this stays on in some form. Darrell and Chris and anybody else should feed in to David if you've got suggestions or ideas. And also you were going to add an article about a consultant potentially, right?
Yes.
No, I don't think necessarily just a consultant to study the Board of Health. But
No,
it was not to study the Board of Health.
A broader regulatory process.
Right, exactly.
Concern.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to point out, if I could, I know this is a Board of Selectmen meeting, not a Board of Health meeting, but to Sean's point, these variances are granted so that people can change out a cesspool into a more healthy septic field so they can sell their home. So it can be, it's often a positive thing, not an obstacle, negative thing.
Hey, thank you for participating, coming in. Okay, so next one is promoter license exception. I think, Paul, this was the one you had suggested a couple of weeks ago, which I think everybody thought was a good idea.
Yeah, this is to take care of the library fair and to take care of the Council on Aging fair and the Wounded Warriors fair, any number of things that might happen here in the town.
Do we need a warrant to do this, Paul? I think my sense is that the board, probably pretty close to unanimously, supports the idea of having some policy in place. Do we need a warrant to do it, or can it
I think the
simply...
statute said you had to have a bylaw.
Yeah, either a bylaw or you have to do it on every case. It has to come before us.
Okay, I beg you not to
So
do
this
So
is
the idea
based on the
was to
statute.
simplify our agenda, basically, so it's
Right.
not, doesn't get cluttered up. And for the organizers of these things, it makes them go
Absolutely.
with a trip.
We've talked about this at some length. I think everyone on the board supports it, is my
All right,
sense.
so should we have a motion to put this on the warrant?
Someone-
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Oh, that was so quick. Excellent. 6J. I don't even know if we want to talk about this one.
I think we did already.
Yeah, I think we sort of did too. Yeah, I mean, wouldn't you say just handle this the same way as the other traffic?
I think we
capital
need
article?
traffic safety committee's input.
Yeah,
So there's going to be a capital article for traffic safety improvements because we believe the town ought to be picking these off, and we want traffic safety's input onto what goes in that.
Yes. This is the article dealing with a traffic study for the intersection of Route 16, 27 Maple Sanger, for people that don't know what we're talking about.
but while we're on the subject, can I ask what the status is of the Goulding and Woodland
The
intersection?
trees haven't come down yet, Paul.
We received the price estimates from Verizon, and we have Ed in for the next selectmen's meeting, penciled in to come in and go over that with
When
me.
are the trees going to come down?
Do we need a warrant or?
Oh, they still need a hearing.
Well, how come that's not happening?
Because,
We didn't have...
well, no, it needs to come back to us.
We have to approve the plan, and then they...
Well, and we need to, and
Do we
Paul
have a
and I
warrant or-
agreed, we needed a price.
Yeah.
So there's a price tag to those trees.
Okay.
and we want that, so we can either vote to support it or not before it goes back
All
to
right,
the
so we
planning
know the
board.
price of the trees, or we're going to know the price of the trees. We're going to give some instruction to how we think it should be done, and then the planning board gets to vote on whether to take trees down, depending on
Right.
what we recommend.
He'll have to, well, yeah, because he, originally, when this came up, he was starting with the tree hearing process. And then we wanted to look for an alternative route, saving trees, and had to get the cost.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
that. I remember
And we have that now. We have Plan A and B,
Good.
and the cost of B.
Good.
Okay, but the reason where I was going with this was, do we need a warrant article?
For
Not,
No, we
not
already-
until,
For more money or for anything?
not until you meet and talk about it at the next meeting.
There's money to do the
No.
construction, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's only if this price is so high that we're,
I can assure you,
Out of
you're not
budget.
going to support it.
In Chapter 90 is still an
It'll be
option
Plan
that's
A. I
available
mean-
out there. There's still
Yeah.
funding available.
Yeah, we need a
there's
warrant
no-
article
there's no
to
way
go Plan
we're-
B.
There's no way we're going to want to spend tens of thousands of dollars to save trees, I don't think, so.
Yeah.
Mark me, but I don't think anybody else is going to want to. Okay, what do we got? Wastewater didn't we talk about this with, oh no, we didn't talk about it.
We
but-
didn't,
but
they
it
put
was-
that in front of us, that's
it was-
why I brought
It was
that up.
addressed, yeah, so this is the Roger Demler article.
Right.
They're trying to still estimate what the cost of this would be. They're also looking for state money, but the idea would be to take the analysis of water and sewer up to the next level and do actually a technical assessment. So it's been conceptually addressed, and now it would be technical issues, costs.
And one of the issues that keeps coming up is, will the existing businesses in the downtown area contribute? And if so, how much? And so there's been a chicken and egg argument over the last 10 years on this, because there's some who've said, well, let's split this, let's partner with the existing businesses, because the solutions here are going to benefit all of them. And, should it be 50-50 or 10-1 or what?
You talking about the study, Paul, or the actual expense of the systems?
All expenses.
Right, but we've talked in this group in the past about doing different types of funding mechanisms, right? I thought that's what this study was going to get into.
But the way I read this was they were looking for town funds to appropriate $50K for a study.
That's right.
And then it has the line here, request private funds. And so the issue that's been a complicating factor from day one has always been, well, what will you contribute towards this expense? And sometimes we've been told none, zero. And sometimes they've said, yeah, we'll contribute something, but there's never been anything concrete. So there have been board members who wanted to see a ratio established on going forward with this project, so that there's, just make up one thing that was mentioned to me, 50-50. So on this project will be 50-50, so we'll pick up 50% of the costs or fund it through our 50% through grants or whatever, and the properties that are going to be benefited by this would contribute the other 50%. And the answer, I believe, has come back, no, we want only the town to pay for it. We don't want to contribute because it's costly enough to live in town, taxes, and all that kind of stuff. And so that...
Who said that, Paul? I can tell you
I'm
that.
trying to compress like 20 years of discussions.
Okay, but I mean, this is a completely new process that Roger Demler's been running over the past couple of years. He's got buy-in from the business groups in the center of town. He's been consulting with school, Frank has been, I think, in the room for part of this, and others have been in the room. And I think you've even at our prior selectmen meetings talked about ways to do tax increment financing and similar types of funding mechanisms to get the system set up. This article is only asking for money to do a study. I couldn't tell if you were suggesting that study shouldn't go forward unless the business groups contribute 50% of the study money, I think what that private funding reference is here is that they're going to try to get some money from the downtown business people towards the, like he says, less than 50 that would be needed for this study, but they're looking for town money to see if it's feasible. And then this water and sewer project was sort of the impetus for Bob Delaney's idea before, and just sort of the general concept of trying to figure out a way to raise money to fund this system so it's not a direct tax expense. We talked about other longer-term funding mechanisms, and tax increment financing as being one of them. There's always the potential that somebody's going to come into town and do a development project in which they're going to have to create a septic treatment plant that might be able to serve other functions and help serve some of the downtown area. There's lots of different options out there. This is just the first, or I guess the second step.
Right, I understand, but that's where things have always floundered.
Okay.
Every time there have been all kinds of initiatives like this, and they all floundered on the issue of who's going to contribute what. It's the same thing could be said about the Jenkins Delaney proposal for the property at Pine Hill. You put 15 houses in there. Where's the water going to come from, and where's the septic going to go? And will that go to a combined system, at which point the economics is considerably reduced, or are we going to have that project do its own on the site, which then brings in the Board of Health because it's going to be a very constrained site and all that kind of stuff. So if you're really going to do that project, you really have to have some place for all this stuff to go. And will that developer pay for some of this? I mean, the issue of who's paying for what has been an issue from the get-go.
That's exactly why the town just needs to own this, the study. So, because we need to own the answer. And if something else plays in, like a large property in downtown, that can add to it, that can redesign it, but it's our issue. It's the town issue. You're never going to get all the businesses to agree. They all have differences of opinion of what, and different needs. The Sherborn Inn / Heritage now has different needs than Ed Rose, and C&L Frosty's has different needs, and everything changes if we actually hand them a plan. But to your point, we've been talking about it for 20 years, so to ask them to cut a check so the town can
Continue to study.
so they can pay for something that the town is going to benefit greatly from or not, and they may never see any benefit from it at all. We're the ones that are going to see a benefit. Town-wide may or may not see a benefit. Not to mention, we own 65% of the Title V capacity in downtown that would be supported by this, at least on the water side. So you can't ask the businesses to help fund the water system here. So we need to get the answer. It's our town. We shouldn't even ask the public if they think, I mean, that was part of why they polled the public and said, do you think the town should pay for the business's water system? And the town said no. It was a resounding no. But the question wasn't phrased right. People didn't realize that it was also the town issue. We have an issue with this well. We have an issue with Pine Hill's well. Woodhaven's had issues for years. People didn't realize that. We need to study it to solve it. And then we'll have something tangible to hand back to the businesses and show them.
Well, I'm in support of having the article on. I'm just trying to give you where I think advisory is going to go with this and where prior boards have gone with it. They've asked the businesses there to contribute, and we can make it so that it's not voluntary. We can do what's called a betterment and make them pay for it.
For the system, not the study.
Yeah, you're one step down the road, though.
I agree with you. There's several ways to do that. And we shouldn't mix that argument up with, we just need to study it.
Part of what this is supposed to do is figure out some of those financing.
Right.
Which ones work, which ones don't work. I also want to know, David, when is the planning board going to release its general plan? Because all this stuff ties into the general plan. If the general, I mean, I had a discussion with a resident who was in the room earlier, and the discussion, out in the hall was, why do you want to, why should the town want to develop land in the center of town? There's other parcels around town that the town controls that they could use for development. Well, if the town's master plan says we should be focused on the center of town to develop, that's an answer to that question, in addition to the fact that it just makes a lot of sense from a planning standpoint, everything else. But if our own planning board echoes that, that's an answer. If our planning board comes out with something else that doesn't say that, well, then that's right. Then a lot of these proposals make no sense because they don't further the plan.
I don't think it's likely they're going to
No,
come
it's
out
not.
there. And
It's not.
so a related question is the planning board going to be a sponsor for this warrant? I would, do we know?
They're involved in the committee.
Well, they have a representative on the
They have
committee.
a rep, yeah.
Or they have had a representative on the committee.
Right, Eric?
Is Eric still on the planning board? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But David, when's the plan coming out?
I don't
Is it
know.
going to be on this town meeting? Warrant for adoption?
I don't think so.
So that's been going on an awfully long time.
Wouldn't it have needed to be in this?
Well, you would think so.
Planning board, I thought the planning board already said they had nothing for town meeting.
They didn't.
But I mean, how many years?
wanna focus
How
on
many
the
years has
master
this
plan.
plan? Yeah, but I mean, how many years has this master plan been in the works? I know they've done a ton of work on it. The survey was a year ago. They've had lots of meetings.
We want the master plan to be approved by town meeting.
What's that?
I would like to see the
Yes,
master.
I think we're all saying the same thing. So just.
My sense is, Mike, that I think they've been working on it for about the last 9 months or so.
Yeah, and I'm not being
meeting
critical. I'm just, I guess, anxious to see it.
A lot of
Yeah.
meetings, yeah.
I'll talk to Gino and find out.
Yeah, just, I mean, it would be a good thing. All right, so the next article here is Irene, Finance Director article. Are these just sort of standard articles, or
The rest of them, some of them are, a couple are standard, a couple are placeholders. I would say, some of them haven't fleshed out into an NOI, they're just kind of a placeholder email.
So 3 of them are new. The 4th is David's, it's just on the wrong page. So the new ones for this year would be authority to expend insurance reimbursement monies.
Yeah.
We received $89,000 for the truck that burned, the snow vehicle.
That's a no-brainer, this thing.
In order to appropriate the money, we need authorization from town meeting.
Yes, so that's a good one.
Right now, the statute limits you to 20,000, or you have to go to a town meeting. So this would provide much more flexibility. And the whole point of getting insurance,
And we can pass a bylaw, Paul, that overrides the statute in this case?
they
No.
amended statute.
Right. You're not
Amended the statute
you're
to
not
allow you to
passing
pass
a
a bylaw.
bylaw.
What are you doing?
You're just extending.
Are you just expending the
authority.
money?
It's authorization to expend it.
Oh, it's not saying in the future we have, I misread this, I
No.
misunderstood this. I thought you meant in the future we don't want to have to go to town meeting to spend money, that's just an insurance reimbursement.
No, you'd
No,
bring this
this-
as a housekeeping article.
This would
every
be
year.
a regular finance article each year, so that if we had funds that year that we needed to appropriate, we
So the
could.
legislature, let me understand, so the legislature amended the statute so that if our truck burns and we get money for a new truck, we have to go to town meeting to buy the new truck?
Not to buy the new truck, to basically reimburse the general fund for the expenditure of the truck.
Use the insurance money to buy the replacement truck.
That's
Jeez,
idiotic.
that's correct.
Yeah, so
It is.
part of the, Governor Baker has just proposed a bill that tries to cure a lot of these problems, and one of them is this insurance
Good.
business, because he thinks the community should be able to do this without having to go through all this rigmarole. So there is a provision in the proposed bill that fixes this problem. It hasn't been passed yet.
Boy, that's taking zero-based budgeting to a vengeance. It's just,
You could pass a local bylaw that addressed it. Like,
Well, but not if it's in conflict with the statute.
Right.
All right, so,
So the next one is the Recreation Revolving Fund. This one is specifically for capital appropriation. They haven't had a capital appropriation article in the past, and this one is actually being sponsored by the Recreation Commission.
okay. I think didn't they mention that to us at one point in the past?
Probably at the meeting about a month ago when they
Yeah,
were
I
here.
think they did,
We
yeah.
were working on it then. The other item is to establish and appropriate from an ambulance reserve fund. If you recall, Elder Housing and Farm Pond was in a strange receipts for appropriation fund that can only be touched by a transfer into the general fund at town meeting. We, for FY16, we fixed that for elder housing and farm pond. This actually fixes it for the ambulance reserve fund going forward. So you vote a spending limit for this fund, and that way, if anything is needed for any ambulatory services, if the ambulance burns, you would have a spending limit that you would be able to draw down from without going back to town meeting.
And is that, just skipping ahead, there's an elder housing capital one, is that a similar one for that? The stabilization fund for elder housing capital that Katie put in?
Yes. That was something that they were looking to start establishing.
So that's not a revolving fund, that's a stabilization fund?
Correct. That would take an act of town meeting. The other one that advisory committee is considering is a special stabilization fund to smooth out the circuit breaker. And this was an idea that they received from the interim superintendent, Mr. McAuliffe, that in prior towns that he served in, because circuit breaker changes each year and you could have a mid-year change, what they had done in his prior town was actually set monies aside to help smooth out circuit breaker as opposed to have the roller coaster and the budgeting each year.
Okay.
So that's something that they're currently discussing at advisory.
What's the bylaw provision for layoff or position elimination? Is that something we need to talk about, or?
Sure, it's something that actually I talked to David about as being HR. One of the things that we noticed within the personnel administration plan is that we don't have a process for disciplinary action for any employees that are covered underneath the personnel administration plan, nor do we have anything for, I'm not saying this is being proposed at all for 17, we don't have any provisions whatsoever for a layoff or even a position elimination. So if a service is no longer needed, or if a position was funded by a grant and the grant expires and it's no longer needed, we don't have any provision to actually let that person go due to lack of funding. So in a sense, you would still have that employee that's employed by the town that you would need to repurpose somewhere else.
You need to do that through the personnel plan, is that what you're saying? You can't just decide this position is no longer needed?
Well, usually you'd have some sort of provision that follows the process that when the position is laid off, that they have a right to call back or preference if the position gets returned up to a period of a year, and then after that year, you don't no longer have any tie to that employee. But I still just need more time with that.
Okay, all right.
So right now, it's like an appointment for a judge. It's a lifetime.
It's a lifetime deal, huh?
The only language currently is termination for cause, for
Okay.
anybody.
Right.
Under
And cause has to be their cause, it can't be because there's no money.
Right, cause is very specific as far as like a firearm or drug-related or something like that.
Okay. There's a citizen placeholder one, I don't know that we need to...
Before we leave these, can I move to put on the warrant the authority to expend insurance reimbursement money, the recreation revolving fund, and the annual appropriation from the ambulance reserve?
Yes.
Second.
Any further discussion? Yeah, all in favor?
I was waiting
Just
for
trying to take notes, and it's 10 o'clock almost.
And can I move to put on the warrant the establishment of a circuit breaker special stabilization fund?
Second? All in
Second.
favor? No?
I'd like to hear more about this.
I don't
You
know
will.
anything about that.
It's going to come
Sorry?
from
I
advisory,
don't
right?
know anything about those two.
Yeah,
So you want to hold off then?
I mean, it's up to you.
It seemed kind of innocuous, but...
They had asked for placeholders. They didn't.
Nothing to knock, just about circuit breaker.
Well, I think this is coming from advisory, so I would be inclined to just let it go on the
Right.
warrant.
It's just for the placeholder.
That's all.
I thought advisory requested this, so.
Yeah, that's all. I wasn't saying we...
That's what that was,
endorse it.
superintendent.
I'm in.
Okay, all right.
So what's happened between you and advisory, Mark? That's,
What about the capital one? That's another one they were asking for?
The capital one, they were looking at something similar to what Kitty had requested for elder housing, to start putting money into a capital projects type fund, so that we're not relying on debt exclusion every year to fund capital projects.
Okay.
So if for example, free cash was in excess of 5%, anything over 5% would go into this fund.
Yeah.
All those mechanisms would have to be established in the article.
The reason why I didn't include that in the motion is that part of the community compact is prepare a capital plan. And it would be really nice if that came forward with this idea. But until they come forward with that idea, if we go down this route, it may be different from what the Department of Revenue assistants or Collins Center or whoever we're using on this comes up with.
So are you
So I-
saying we shouldn't put this on the plan, on the warrant, even though advisory wants it on the warrant?
No, I'm just, the reason why I made the motion for the circuit breaker was because A, advisory, and B, because it made sense.
No, I
On
get
the
you.
second one, I want to hold off a little bit.
So we talk about it next time, is that what you're saying?
Next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just let George and Mary know. if
We
they'd
need a
like
little
to
more
attend.
info on that one. Okay. This citizens petition, I mean, if it comes in with a citizens petition, I guess we have to put it on the warrant. I don't know that we need to discuss it.
Yeah, it looked interesting at first. I just need to go through it more, and I wanted to clear something with town council, and it might be something that I bring back to you guys at the next meeting.
Great, let's keep moving, Dave. Okay, elder housing. Do we need to talk about this one?
Didn't we just talk
That's
about
the
this?
same one.
Yes,
Do we vote to put this on the warrant also?
Well,
not yet.
That's
Oh,
the
this
one
is
you
what he just
hold.
said he didn't want to.
yeah, just hold on this.
Hold this one, okay. This is the other capital stabilization fund. Okay. I mean, this is another one where we're going to end up, we're going to end up wanting to talk to Kitty about this then. She's going to be on our next agenda.
Yeah, it may make sense to create the sort of an omnibus capital that would include elderly housing, as opposed to creating like 8 or 9 different funds. One would be the town building stabilization fund, one would be the
It
elderly
might be,
housing.
although you have Woodhaven as a development that's going to have its own needs, and if you start borrowing from Woodhaven to, improve the Solwyn Street intersection, you're not going to have what you need when you need it for Woodhaven.
I understand, it may be an excellent idea, I'm thinking here at 9:45 at night to come up.
All right, so we'll talk about it next
Could
time.
be a major,
Cemetery Enlargement Fund.
that you need to do every year. This is a standard boilerplate
It's
article.
a standard article every year.
So I would move to put this on the warrant.
Second.
It's been on every warrant for
Yeah.
at least 25 years.
It wouldn't be town meeting without this
Would we
warrant.
be able to understand where the
No,
enlargement would
I
take
don't think
place?
that's true. I don't think that's totally true. They're asking for two different things here.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first one is
One of them's huge.
yeah, the first one is the standard one we've seen for the 30 years I've lived in
So
town.
that's the enlargement fund. But
Right.
I mean, the enlargement fund means they're selling new lots, right?
Right.
So it's up to them where they put those lots and,
It's gives them the right to transfer that proceeds from those sales
Right, so they can use it.
so they can use it.
got it.
That's all that is.
All right, so.
But they're also asking for monies that are outside of that.
Something different. That's
Yeah, that
different.
That's
one.
on a different sheet.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm moving
That's
that
the
we
next
put
one here.
this
The roads.
enlargement fund on the warrant.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor? See how much stuff you can get done at almost 10 o'clock at night? Okay. The next one is one that we're definitely not going to get into tonight. As Sean points out, it's a huge dollar expense. It also falls into Paul's capital category.
Right.
And I'm not saying I was against it, I
No,
wanted to make sure we
but
knew.
in terms of the time of night and the way we've been handling this,
Right.
I would suggest we put it off till next time for discussion.
Agreed.
Everybody okay with that?
Yeah, and maybe they'll be here.
Good. Carol Marple, new dog kennel license bylaw.
We need to have this.
Yeah.
It's one of those little gaps in the town's regulatory system. State law says that if you have 3 or more dogs, you have to get a kennel license. And so someone
And the
went...
town clerk issues them.
Right, so someone went to the town clerk and she was like, wow, I don't know anything about this. So in order to bring that process into better compliance with the general laws, we need a local bylaw that would make her feel comfortable.
Is there some source, Paul, at MMA that picks up these quirky bylaws? I mean, we had the same thing with that that licensing for people who are at flea markets. I mean, these are statutes that are on the books that require the town clerk or some other official to do something, and yet somehow we don't know about them as a town, and we found out about them after the fact, or they get discovered casually.
It's usually your town council. I mean, I
Okay.
send out stuff to my towns.
Well, I think there were announcements at the time, but is there some omnibus checklist where we can go through and make sure we're covered on all the statutes that Sherborn should be covered on? No?
I mean, you'd have to ask your
You
town
get
council.
Barbara to do it, yeah.
I mean, at the trainings, they have things to look out for each year, and if there are any changes to the law.
Yeah, I'm thinking more of an, almost like an audit, not things that have changed, but things that somehow have been skipped. I mean, this kennel thing was somehow skipped. We didn't, we found out about it by chance. The
been
flea
there.
market thing was somehow omitted, even though there was a notice about it, and it was fixed after the fact, and that's fine, but, maybe we ought to make sure there's no landmines out there that are gonna really hurt the town because we haven't been doing something we were supposed to do. And it's not just confined to town clerk's function, it's anything we should be doing.
Well, in the meantime, can I move that we put
Yes.
on the warrant?
Yes, you can. All right, all in favor?
Oh, wow.
Is that it? I think that's it.
Is this noted here about workers' comp?
That was,
Refer to
I
the
think that's
kennel?
Diane's note or something.
yeah,
Refer to the kennel thing, or?
it is.
Okay.
All right. We're gonna have to explain to people
Part of the
when
license.
when this dog license thing comes up that we're not talking about commercial kennels, because
Yeah.
remember last year, it was a disaster. All right, set the next meeting. I know, Paul, you had some scheduling constraints.
Can't do the
For
7th.
7th. Can people do the 6th? I know that's a Wednesday. Mark, I don't know if you're available on Wednesdays.
Six
Yeah,
works
I
for
would be
me.
after the 6th, but let's do the 6th.
Oh, wait, 7th's the Wednesday. What about the 8th? The 8th is Thursday.
No, the 6th is a Wednesday. You
What
got
am
that
I-
right.
I'm in the wrong year. Look at this.
Living in
That
the
was a
past.
better year you were in.
Oh, I just pushed the plus sign on my iPhone. It took me back to January 2015. That's not good.
Oh,
The
But you went to 7.
Tom
the room-
Brady and Aaron Rodgers were just put in the Pro Bowl. There's a little announcement here.
Thank you, Paul.
I'm a Tom Brady fan. Yes, man, look at my calendar. And it says, breaking news, Tom Brady got this blah, blah, blah.
All right.
Are we doing the 6th?
On
Can
the
people do
6th, there's a challenge with the rooms.
Okay.
We have advisory meeting that night as well as Board of Health.
I just
Doesn't
have
sound
to,
good. I can't do the
And-
5th.
Advisory goes there.
And the Insurance Advisory Committee.
we
I
got
can
the
do the
police.
4th, I can do the 5th, I can do the 6th.
I'll tell you what, if you do the 5th, you
I can't do
don't.
the 5th. I'm
Oh,
not here. I'm not changing it to the 5th.
If you did if you met on the 6th and did the executive session at the beginning of the meeting, would that work?
Insurance Advisory meets at 6.
At 6 o'clock? So you'd have to have
They
your
can't go to
executive
PD?
session at 5 o'clock.
Advisories and PD.
All right, let me
That's
ask you a question. Can we meet at 7 o'clock on the 6th? Would that give us a chance to clear out some other group?
I'm good.
The Insurance Advisory's been running about 2 hours.
No, they have.
What I was referring to is the executive session. If that insurance advisory group is meeting at 6 p.m., they would want to know whatever you decide in executive session is going to impact that meeting.
So it sounds like the 4th of January is the only practical day. That's
Unless
the-
you did it earlier in the evening on the 6th at like 5 p.m.
I can do 5 p.m.
Well, I think that's a burden on people.
Yeah, I can't make it that early.
So what about the 4th?
Is the 4th doable?
Good for me.
4th works, what time? 6?
6 a.m., sure.
6 a.m. is better than 6 p.m.
We
yeah.
can start at 6 and end at 6
6
a.m.
p.m. All right, we're going to go feed the chickens with Paul or whatever you're doing at 6 a.m.
That works, right?
Okay, all right, so can we get a room that night, guys?
Yes.
I'll take care
That'll
of
be
it.
We're
good.
doing Monday the 4th.
Monday,
Monday the
January 4th. David, that's, it's going to be...
David's going to need to post that like
You're-
tomorrow.
Well, no, it's going to need to post it. You need to post the middle next week, but if
Yeah.
the office is not staffed next week, somebody will be there, right?
Oh, yeah, it's,
Okay.
it's,
I'm there Monday through Thursday. I'm
You're there
working
Monday
New
through
Year's
Thursday.
Eve.
Somebody's going to have to work with me on the agenda, I guess, next week. You're out of touch? or-
no, I'm not going to be out of touch.
Diane's-
We'll still do it.
Diane's in
Diane
the
will be
office as
there,
well.
okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
we'll both be there.
All right. I don't want to have another agenda that doesn't have things on it that we talked about. Okay, all right, good, thanks, I'm glad that worked out, Paul.
You want to do this, the next meeting after that, since that was
Painful.
we want to try and get ahead of all these people
I can do the next
reserving our
Thursday.
room. Huh?
Can we do the 14th, no, it would be the 14th, the 21st, is that the date?
No, that's the day I can't do. I can't do the 7th or the 21st. Basically,
I
only
agree.
2 days in January I can't do, but I can do the 14th.
So we would just have like a week and 3 days, and then we get on a slightly different cycle, is that the idea?
Well, we were doing nicely with you're alternating Thursdays, which was great.
It's just, normally you would have met every week in January into February.
All right, let's do 14th then, it's fine. If people can do it, can people do the 14th?
Yeah, I can.
I can.
I'm good.
Because there's a lot of stuff to be going.
Yeah. There's a lot going on.
Maybe we won't be here till 10 o'clock, headed into executive session.
This is the latest one we've had in a while.
It was your article, Sean.
It was mine. I
I don't think we can.
know. And I'll point out that
I don't think we
I'm
can
just
blame it
teasing.
on
I've been
any
through
one
it.
person.
I've been to a couple Board of Health meetings till midnight, by the way.
I'm just
They do it
teasing.
on a regular basis.
I left at midnight and they were still going
Yeah.
on.
Okay. Yeah, are we all set?
And which one?
Do you want to do the
4th and the
following?
14th. And then we'll talk about it after that, at that point. You know, some of it is people's schedules, sometimes gel. I get a lot of evening hearings too, Paul. All right, so we're going to do an executive session now. I think it's a little late to be doing the minutes at this point. Let's just go to the,
Well, the minutes are a no-brainer. I move approval.
okay.
Second.
Yeah, I agree.
You guys have all read them?
I read them.
All right. They're
Good as usual.
moved, seconded, all in favor? All right, great.
We need the payroll warrants for David's.
Yeah, I know,
payroll.
I'm doing that now.
Oh, sorry.
Got those.
Move approval of the payroll. warrant.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? That's great. Okay. I'm signing this one in red ink, David.
We're in a deficit already?
That's what I happen to have in my hand.
For the executive session, David and I were discussing moving it, if you'd like, to Monday, January 4th.
Happy to do that if that meets your time schedule. I think all of us could use not doing it tonight, I think.
The Insurance Advisory Committee meeting is on that Wednesday, the 6th, so it still
Okay.
works right within the timing.
Are you guys all okay with that?
Yes.
Am I recused from that executive session based on,
I assumed you'd want to be because we're talking about premium rates from Maya, West Suburban,
Moving it to the 4th, meeting on the 4th.
and strategy.
Yeah, is that right?
so I would be...
That would help me. This stuff came so late. I mean, I want to be able to focus on this stuff.
You can have it
Steam.
and still have it.
I think it's too important to do
Yeah,
on
but-
a late night.
You don't want to.
So that's going to be after the meeting or before the meeting?
That's after.
Okay,
What's
so
after the
I can
meeting?
leave early and my colleagues can work industriously into the night.
Right. On the 4th, the executive session is still going to be at the end of the meeting, right?
Yeah, did you get that Pro Bowl thing in the minutes, by the way? Are you?
I missed it.
The big announcement here, Tom
Tom Brady
Brady.
announcement. I want to make sure that's in the minutes.
What a fabulous guy Tom Brady
That's
is.
under the reports, right?
Yeah, okay, good. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
And these are two
So moved.
dates.
Do a second.
Second.
All in favor?
We had to think
All
about it.
right, great, okay. What is that one? That's something different?
There's 3 there.
There's 3